Story 1. The Passenger Who Remembered Tomorrow. The hitchhiker told me about my daughter's death 3 days before it happened. I picked him up at 11:47 p.m. on March 14th, 2023, just outside Elko, Nevada, where Interstate 80 cuts through darkness so complete you could convince yourself you're the last person on Earth. My name is Robert Hayes, and I've been hauling refrigerated freight for Schneider National for 12 years. The reefer unit behind my cab was carrying 40,000 pounds of frozen beef to Sacramento, humming its mechanical lullaby, and I was fighting sleep when I saw him standing under the single working streetlight at the abandoned Sinclair station. He wore a gray suit that looked expensive in a way that made no sense for a man hitching rides in the Nevada desert. No luggage, no signs of distress, just standing there with his thumb out like he'd stepped out of 1963. I should have kept driving. "Appreciate the lift," he said, climbing into my Freightliner Cascadia. His voice had a weird quality to it, like listening to someone speak through water. "You're Robert Hayes, 43 years old, divorced. Daughter named Emily, she's 19, studying biology at Oregon State." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "How the hell do you know that?" "I know lots of things, Robert." He smiled, and his teeth caught the dashboard lights in a way that made them look translucent. "I know that in 68 hours, Emily will be driving home from a study group. It'll be raining. There's a Honda Civic that runs a red light at the intersection of Harrison and 9th. The impact happens at 10:23 p.m. She dies on the way to the hospital." The rational part of my brain wanted to laugh it off as the ravings of a lunatic. But something in his voice carried absolute certainty, the way you describe something you'd already witnessed. "Get out of my truck." "Can't do that, Robert. We have things to discuss first." He turned to look at me fully, and I made the mistake of glancing over. His eyes were wrong. Not the color or the shape, but something about the way they didn't quite sync with the movement of his head, like there was a delay between his body and whatever looked out through those eyes. "I've made this trip 47 times, he continued. "Every time I tell you about Emily, every time you react differently. Once you tried to strangle me. Twice you threw yourself out of the moving truck. 11 times you called Emily immediately to warn her. Doesn't matter. She always dies at 10:23 p.m. March 17th at Harrison and 9th. I grabbed my cell phone. No signal. We were in one of those dead zones that pepper the Nevada desert, but my phone showed something worse than no bars. It showed bars that flickered and changed, 1 minute showing full signal, the next showing symbols that didn't exist on any network I knew. "The loop resets at exactly 2:14 a.m., he said, checking a watch I hadn't noticed before. The hands moved counterclockwise. "When you wake up, it'll be 11:35 p.m. March 14th, and you'll see me standing under that streetlight again. Sometimes you pick me up, sometimes you don't. But Emily always dies, and the loop always continues." "This is insane. You're insane." "Am I?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph. He shouldn't have had room for a photograph in that jacket. I'd watched him get in, seen he had nothing on him. But there it was, and he handed it to me. The photograph showed my truck, this truck, wrapped around a concrete barrier. The cab was crushed like a beer can. The date stamp in the corner read March 14, 2023, 1:47 a.m. That was an hour from now. "This is what happened the first time," he said softly. "The original timeline. You fell asleep at the wheel. You died instantly. But something went wrong with your death, Robert. Something in the universe hiccuped. And now we're stuck here in this loop, and I'm stuck with you, and your daughter is going to die in 3 days, over and over forever." The highway stretched ahead, empty and black. I'd driven this route hundreds of times, knew every mile marker and exit, but suddenly it felt unfamiliar. The reflectors on the lane dividers were spaced wrong, too far apart, then too close together, creating a rhythm that made my eyes hurt. Who are you? I don't remember anymore. I've been in this loop for what feels like centuries. I know I had a name once. I know I existed outside of this 3-day cycle. But it's been so long, Robert, so many iterations. I've watched you cry, I've watched you rage. I've watched you go catatonic. Nothing changes the outcome. He pointed ahead to mile marker 312. In 45 seconds, you're going to see another truck pulled over on the shoulder. The driver's name is Michael Chen. His left rear tire blew out. If you stop to help him, you'll be delayed by 17 minutes. It won't save Emily, but it will change the sequence of events leading to the crash. I watched the highway. Sure enough, at exactly the moment he predicted, headlights appeared on the shoulder, a Peterbilt with its hazards flashing. A man stood next to it, waving for help. I drove past. Smart, the hitchhiker said, but futile. Let me tell you what I've learned about this loop. Time isn't linear here, it's a knot. Emily's death is the knot's center, and every choice you make just tightens it. I've seen you reach her before the accident. I've seen you sabotage the Honda Civic days in advance. I've seen you convince her to stay home that night. The universe finds a way. A different car, a different intersection, an aneurysm. Once she was struck by lightning through her apartment window. The temperature in the cab dropped suddenly. I could see my breath misting in the air, even though the heater was blasting. The reefer unit behind us should have been maintaining a steady hum, but now it sounded wrong, the motor running backwards, ice forming on the inside of the windshield despite the heat. What do you want from me? I want you to understand that we're both dead, Robert. We died in that crash at 1:47 a.m. This loop is our purgatory, the universe trying to process a death that created a paradox. You can't save Emily because she was never in danger in the original timeline. She's only dying now because you're dead, and reality is trying to correct for your absence. The mile markers were counting backwards now. 311, 310, 309. I was driving forward, but the numbers descended. The stars outside began to move, drawing spirals across the sky. Every choice branches the timeline, he continued, his voice taking on a rhythmic quality almost hypnotic. But all branches lead to the same route. Emily dies, you wake up at 11:35 p.m. March 14th. You see me under the streetlight. Sometimes you remember fragments, déjà vu, a sense that this has happened before, but never enough to break free. I tried to focus on the road, but it was becoming difficult. The asphalt ahead looked liquid, rippling like heat waves, and the white lines seemed to be moving independently, crawling across the surface like worms. My phone rang. It shouldn't have had signal, but it was ringing, Emily's photo lighting up the screen. I answered it. Dad, her voice sounded distant, distorted. Dad, where are you? Emily, honey, I'm in Nevada. Dad, you need to let go. You've been holding on for so long. I'm okay. You need to let go. The hitchhiker reached over and took the phone from my hand. He held it up, and I could see through it. The device was becoming transparent, revealing the circuitry inside, which wasn't circuitry at all, but something organic, pulsing like a heart. She knows, he said. On some level, in some distant part of reality, Emily knows you're trapped here. She's trying to reach you, but the loop won't let her through completely. The phone dissolved in his hand like sugar in water. I've tried to kill you, Robert, dozens of times, thought maybe if you died in the loop it would break. But you just wake up at 11:35. I've tried killing myself. Same result. We're ghosts haunting a moment that can't pass. The dashboard clock read 1, 11:47 a.m. "Here we go," the hitchhiker said. The concrete barrier appeared out of nowhere, materializing in the middle of the highway like it had always been there. I yanked the wheel hard, felt the truck start to jackknife, the reefer unit swinging wide. The world tumbled, glass shattering, metal screaming, my body weightless, then crushed, pain everywhere and nowhere. And then I was driving. The clock read 11:35 p.m., March 14th, 2023. Ahead, under a single working streetlight at the abandoned Sinclair station, a figure in a gray suit stood with his thumb out. Something felt familiar about this moment, a nagging sense that I'd done this before. I reached for the memory, but it slipped away like smoke. The man's eyes met mine through the windshield, and I saw something there. A pleading, a desperation, a warning. I pressed the accelerator and drove past him. In my rearview mirror, I watched him fade into the darkness. For just a moment, I thought I saw him smile, and the expression was one of such profound relief that it made my blood run cold. My phone showed 11:47 p.m. I'd lost 12 minutes somehow. The highway ahead looked normal again, solid, real, linear. The stars held still in the sky. 3 days from now, my daughter would be driving home from a study group. It would be raining. I had no idea why that thought filled me with such unshakable dread, but I picked up my phone to call her anyway. No signal. Behind me, far in the distance, I thought I heard someone laughing, or screaming, or both at once. The mile markers counted upward, and I drove through the Nevada night, unable to shake the feeling that I'd forgotten something crucially important, something that might mean the difference between life and death. The fur unit hummed its mechanical lullaby, carrying 40,000 pounds of frozen beef toward Sacramento, and the darkness pressed in from all sides like a living thing, patient and hungry, waiting for something I couldn't name to happen again. Asterisk story 2, the woman who walked through walls. She stepped through the passenger door without opening it, and Marcus Chen watched her molecules briefly separate before resolidifying into the woman who would end his life. It happened at 2:33 a.m. on July 8th, 2022, on Highway 54 cutting through Kansas wheat fields that stretched to infinity under a moon so bright it hurt to look at. Marcus had been hauling auto parts from Detroit to Amarillo for Trans AM trucking, and he'd been driving for 16 hours straight, which meant he was hallucinating, which meant the woman currently sitting in his passenger seat, smiling with too many teeth, couldn't possibly be real. "Hello, Marcus," she said. Her voice came from everywhere at once, the speakers, the vents, the space behind his ears. "I need a ride." He wanted to scream, but his throat had closed up. The woman wore a yellow sundress that would have been cheerful in daylight but looked jaundiced in the dashboard glow. Her hair moved independently of the air conditioning, each strand writhing like it was underwater. When she turned her head, there was a half-second delay before her features caught up with the movement. "You can see me clearly," she said, and it wasn't a question. "That's rare. Most people, their brains just edit me out. They see an empty seat or they convince themselves I'm a normal hitchhiker who climbed in normally. But your mind works differently. Autism spectrum, high functioning, pattern recognition through the roof. You see what's actually there." Marcus had been diagnosed with Asperger's when he was 12. He'd learned to navigate a neurotypical world through careful observation and mimicry, and he'd become a trucker specifically because it meant minimal human interaction. Now he wished desperately for another person, anyone, to confirm he wasn't losing his mind. "What are you?" His voice came out strangled. "Honestly, I'm not entirely sure anymore." She reached toward the dashboard and her hand passed through it like smoke before solidifying enough to turn off the radio. I used to be human, I remember that much. My name was Sarah Brightwell. I died in 1987 on this exact stretch of highway. But something went wrong with my death. Instead of passing on, I got stuck between states of matter, between here and wherever there is. She held up her hand, and Marcus watched in horror as she made it phase, solid, then translucent, then solid again. Through her palm, he could see the highway beyond, the white lines ticking past. It took me years to learn control, she continued. At first, I'd phase randomly. I'd be solid one moment, falling through the floor the next. I haunted this highway watching trucks pass, unable to interact. But eventually, I figured out the trick: willpower, concentration. I can be as solid as you or as insubstantial as air. Marcus's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. The CB radio crackled with static, and through it, he heard voices that might have been other truckers or might have been something else entirely. "Why are you here? What do you want?" Sarah's smile widened, and Marcus counted 37 teeth where there should have been 32. "I want to show you something. Take exit 247. "There is no exit 247 on Highway 54. "There is tonight." And there was. The green sign appeared out of nowhere, reflecting his headlights. Exit 247 services. Marcus had driven this route 43 times. He'd memorized every exit, every mile marker, every landmark. Exit 247 didn't exist. "Take it," Sarah said, and her voice carried a command that bypassed his conscious mind and spoke directly to his hands, which moved the steering wheel without his permission. The exit ramp curved downward at an angle that violated physics, descending too steeply, too far. Marcus's ears popped from pressure changes that shouldn't happen at ground level. The headlights revealed pavement that looked organic, pulsing with veins of darker material that might have been tar or might have been something that bled. At the bottom of the ramp, a truck stop sprawled under flickering neon that spelled out "Crossroads" in letters that changed color in sequences that hurt to watch. 15 trucks sat in the parking lot, their chrome reflecting the neon in ways that created impossible angles and geometries. "Welcome to the in-between," Sarah said. "The place where things that can't exist do exist, where the dead who won't die congregate, where physics takes a coffee break." Marcus pulled into a parking space, though he didn't remember deciding to. His body was operating on autopilot, carrying him through a nightmare his consciousness could barely process. Through the truck stop's windows, he saw figures moving, people who flickered between states of existence, their bodies solid one moment and skeletal the next. "You're going to go inside," Sarah said. "You're going to see what we've built here, and then you're going to make a choice." "What choice?" "Whether to join us or drive away. But I should warn you, everyone who finds this place finds it because they're supposed to. Because some part of them is already dead, already phasing between states, already becoming like me." Marcus looked down at his hands. For just a moment he could see through them, the steering wheel visible through his translucent flesh. Then they solidified again. No, that's not possible. I'm alive. You died 3 hours ago, Marcus. Heart attack. Massive coronary at exactly 11:47 p.m. You felt the pain in your chest, that crushing weight, remember? You thought it was indigestion from the gas station burrito. You kept driving. Your heart stopped at mile marker 189, but your brain, your beautiful, different brain that processes reality in unique ways, it didn't shut down like it should. It kept going. And now you're caught in the same trap I am, dead but conscious. Solid but phasing, here but also there. The memories came flooding back. The pain, the tightness, his left arm going numb. The moment of vertigo where the world tilted and his vision grayed at the edges. He'd pulled over, he thought. He'd called 911, he thought. But when he checked his phone, there were no recent calls. When he looked in the side mirror, there were no other cars on the highway behind him. There hadn't been for hours. The human brain can run for a surprisingly long time after the heart stops, Sarah explained, her voice almost gentle now. Especially a brain like yours with its unusual wiring. You've been driving your corpse for 3 hours, Marcus. Your body's in the cab, cooling, stiffening, but your consciousness is still running the show, still animating the meat, still refusing to accept what happened. Marcus climbed out of the truck. His legs felt wrong, too light, like they might phase through the asphalt. When he looked back at the cab, he saw himself sitting in the driver's seat, head tilted back, eyes open but unseeing, skin already grayish. "This is where we learn to exist as we are now," Sarah said, materializing beside him. "The crossroads, a pocket dimension created by collective death denial. There are 73 of us here currently. Truckers mostly, but also travelers who died on the highway and couldn't let go. We've been here for decades, some of us. Centuries in a few cases. Time doesn't work right in the in-between." She gestured toward the truck stop, and Marcus saw them clearly now. The other ghosts, the other in-betweeners. A woman in 1950s clothing who flickered like a film reel missing frames. A man whose body was partially embedded in a concrete pillar, as if he'd phased while walking through it and lost concentration. A child who existed in multiple states simultaneously, solid and skeletal and absent all at once. "The choice is this," Sarah said. "Come inside, learn to control your new state. Exist here in the crossroads where the rules are different and the dead can maintain consciousness indefinitely. Or try to drive away. Return to the highway. Let nature take its course. Your brain will shut down eventually, hours, days, maybe weeks if you're strong. But it will shut down and you'll experience every moment of your decay while still conscious inside your corpse." Marcus felt his stomach drop, or where his stomach used to be. Could ghosts feel nausea? "There's no going back," she continued. "No resurrection, no waking up in a hospital. Your body is dead, Marcus, but your consciousness doesn't have to die with it. Here in the in-between, you can exist. Not alive, but not fully gone. We have community, purpose. We guide other dying travelers, help them make the transition. We maintain the crossroads, expand it, explore the boundaries of what's possible when you're unshackled from a functioning body." He looked at the truck stop. Through its windows, he saw the other ghosts engaged in activities that mimicked life. Drinking coffee that phased through their translucent throats, playing cards that flickered between multiple suits, watching a television that showed every channel simultaneously. "How long?" Marcus asked. "How long what? How long have you been here, really?" Sarah's expression flickered, showing something ancient beneath the young face. "I died in 1987. That was 35 years ago by external time. But here, I've experienced centuries. Time moves differently in the in-between, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, sometimes sideways. We've built entire civilizations in this truck stop, Marcus. We've created art and music and philosophy. We've explored the boundaries of consciousness itself." "But you're dead." "We're beyond death, or something new." Marcus walked toward the truck stop entrance. The automatic doors didn't open for him. They couldn't sense his nearly non-existent mass. He had to concentrate, make himself solid, heavy enough to trigger the sensor. The effort was exhausting. Inside, the impossible became routine. The coffee maker poured liquid that was simultaneously hot and cold, caffeinated and decaffeinated, existing in quantum superposition until observed. The magazine rack held publications from every decade, past and future, their covers showing events that hadn't happened yet or had been forgotten by history. A trucker whose name tag read Earl, and whose body was riddled with exit wounds from a 1973 robbery gone wrong welcomed him with a handshake that felt like touching ice and fire, and nothing all at once. "You get used to it," Earl said. His voice echoed with gunshots. "The phasing, the temporal displacement, the existential dread, give it a few decades." A few decades. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He thought about his sister in Portland who'd be expecting his call tonight. His parents in San Francisco already worried about his solitary lifestyle. Would they ever know what happened to him? Would they find his body in the truck, or would he fade from their memories like he'd never existed? "I can't stay here," Marcus said. "I have a life I have." "You have a corpse," Sarah interrupted. "And a consciousness that won't let go. That's all, Marcus. The sooner you accept that, the easier the transition becomes." But Marcus was already backing toward the door. His mind, his different pattern-recognizing autism spectrum mind, was processing the details Sarah had tried to hide. The way Earl's smile never quite reached his eyes. The way the other ghosts moved in loops, repeating actions with slight variations like NPCs in a video game. The way time in the crossroads didn't just move differently, it didn't move at all. They were trapped in a single moment, stretched to infinity. This wasn't consciousness beyond death. This was hell with fluorescent lighting. "I'm leaving," Marcus said. Sarah's face twisted, her features rearranging into something inhuman. "You can't. No one leaves the crossroads once they enter. The highway won't take you back. You're ours now." Marcus ran. He phased through the door, through the wall, through the parking lot asphalt, feeling his consciousness stretch and thin. His truck, his body's truck, sat where he'd parked it, and he dove toward it, willing himself back into the corpse behind the wheel. The reunion of consciousness and dead flesh was agony. He felt every stiffening muscle, every cooling blood cell, every neuron firing its last desperate signals. But he forced his dead hands onto the wheel, his dead feet onto the pedals. The engine turned over, shouldn't have, couldn't have, but did. Sarah materialized in the passenger seat. "You'll be back," she said. "When your brain finally dies, when consciousness can't sustain itself anymore, you'll phase naturally into the in-between. We'll be waiting." Marcus drove up the impossible exit ramp, back toward Highway 54. In his rearview mirror, the crossroads shimmered and vanished like heat haze. The highway stretched ahead, empty and normal and real. His phone showed 5:47 a.m., 4 hours since his heart had stopped. How much longer did he have? How long could consciousness persist without a functioning brain? The sun rose over the Kansas wheat fields, and in its light Marcus could see himself, translucent, phasing, more ghost than man, but still driving, still moving forward, still refusing to stop. He would drive until his consciousness finally flickered out. He would drive through every moment of his decay. He would drive past the point where most people would have accepted death and let go. Because Marcus Chen had never been like most people. His brain had always worked differently, seen patterns others missed, held onto thoughts longer than neurotypical minds could sustain. And if that meant he would experience his own death for days or weeks or months, before finally fading into the in-between, then that's what he would do. The highway stretched ahead, and Marcus Chen, dead trucker, drove into the dawn, his body cooling in the driver's seat, his consciousness burning with determination not to end. Behind him, invisible but present, Sarah Brightwell smiled and began walking. She had all the time in the world. The dead always did. Asterisk Story 3. The Hitchhiker with yesterday's newspaper. Patricia Sullivan found the newspaper on her passenger seat with tomorrow's date, and the headline read, Trucker PATRICISULLIVAN murders 17 in highway rampage. The newspaper shouldn't have existed. She'd just done her pre-trip inspection at 9:15 p.m. on November 2nd, 2023 at a Flying J outside Tulsa. The cab had been empty. She'd locked it herself, had the only key. Now climbing back in with a coffee and a breakfast burrito, she found the paper spread across the passenger seat like someone had been reading it. The Oklahoma Tribune, November 3rd, 2023, tomorrow. Patricia had been hauling freight for Werner Enterprises for 7 years. She'd driven through every state in the lower 48, had seen her share of weird shit on the highways, strange lights, unexplained phenomena, things her brain couldn't quite process. But this was different. This was specific. This was about her. She grabbed the paper with shaking hands. The ink was fresh, still slightly wet. The front page showed a photograph, this truck parked sideways across Interstate 40. Emergency vehicles surrounded it. Body bags lined the shoulder, 17 of them. The article detailed a massacre. Patricia Sullivan, age 39, had apparently driven through an outdoor wedding reception at a rest stop, then continued down the highway, deliberately striking vehicles and pedestrians. 17 dead, 23 injured. Witnesses described her as vacant-eyed and unresponsive to screaming. She'd been shot by police at mile marker 237. "That's impossible," Patricia said aloud. Her voice sounded small in the cab. "I would never." A figure materialized in her passenger seat. Not gradually, not fading into existence. One moment the seat was empty, the next a man sat there, wearing a suit that looked like it had been tailored in the 1940s, holding an identical copy of the newspaper. "But you will," he said. His face was unremarkable, the kind of face you'd forget immediately after seeing, except for his eyes, which reflected the dashboard lights like an animal's. "Or rather, you would have. The timeline branches from here." Patricia's hand moved toward the door handle, but the man spoke a single word in a language she didn't recognize, and her body froze. Completely frozen. She could breathe, could blink, but couldn't move anything else. "I apologize for the paralysis," he said, not sounding apologetic at all. "But we need to have a conversation, and humans have a tendency to flee before understanding the situation. My name is Nathaniel Ward. I'm what you might call a temporal auditor. I ensure causality remains stable across timeline variations." He set down his newspaper, and Patricia noticed it showed a different headline. Trucker Prevents Massacre, SAVES 17 Lives. "There are two possible futures branching from this moment," Nathaniel continued. "In one, you pick up a hitchhiker in approximately," he checked a pocket watch, 14 minutes. "His name is Daniel Rostov. He's possessed by an entity we've been tracking for 3 centuries. The entity takes control of your body and uses it to commit the atrocity described in this newspaper." He tapped the first paper, the one showing her as a murderer. "In the other timeline, you don't pick him up. You drive past. The entity finds another host, commits different atrocities elsewhere, and the 17 people at that rest stop live. You become a minor hero, the woman who called in a suspicious hitchhiker to 911, leading to his arrest for unrelated warrants." Patricia tried to speak, but her jaw wouldn't move. Nathaniel waved his hand, and she felt control return to her face. "This is insane," she managed. "Entities, timelines, you're talking about. Things that shouldn't exist but do. Yes, Welcome to the truth beneath the world, Patricia. The reality that most humans are mercifully blind to. He leaned back, and the seat shouldn't have reclined, but did, folding into angles that made her eyes hurt. The entity is called Saravane. It's old, predates human civilization. It feeds on atrocity, on the emotional energy released during mass violence. It hitchhikes through history, possessing people, making them commit horrors, then moving on before it can be caught. Why are you telling me this? Why not just stop it yourself? Because I can't. Temporal auditors can observe, can reveal, can nudge, but we cannot directly intervene. The paradoxes would be catastrophic. You have to make the choice. Pick him up or don't. Commit murder or prevent it. The timeline will solidify based on your decision. Patricia felt control returning to her arms. She grabbed the steering wheel, tried to start the truck. The engine turned over but immediately died, again and again. The truck wouldn't start. "You're keeping me here," she said, anger rising through her fear. "You're forcing me to wait for this thing." "I'm ensuring you understand the stakes," Nathaniel corrected. "In 10 minutes, Daniel Rostov will walk up to your truck and ask for a ride to Oklahoma City. He'll seem normal, tired, grateful, harmless. The entity is subtle when it wants to be. It'll wait until you're back on the highway, wait until you've let your guard down, and then it'll slip into your mind like water through cracks." He opened the second newspaper, the one where she was a hero. "But if you refuse..." Him, if you drive away, you save 17 lives. You change the timeline. And Saravane will be forced to find another host, which gives us time to set another trap, another intervention point. Then give me back control of my truck, and I'll drive away now." "Not yet. You need to see him. You need to look in his eyes, because I need you to understand something crucial. This isn't the first time we've had this conversation." Nathaniel reached into his jacket and pulled out a stack of newspapers. Dozens of them, all showing variations of November 3rd, 2023. In some, Patricia was the killer. In others, she was the hero. In several, she was the victim, murdered by Saravane wearing someone else's face. "We're in a probability knot," he explained. "A point where multiple timelines converge and compete for dominance. I've been to this moment 43 times, Patricia. 43 different versions of you sitting in this exact truck having this exact conversation. Sometimes you believe me, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you pick up Daniel anyway, thinking you can resist the possession. You can't. No one can." Patricia's phone buzzed. A text from her daughter in Phoenix. "Hey Mom, drive safe tonight, love you." The timestamp showed 9:47 p.m. That text shouldn't arrive until tomorrow morning. Her daughter always texted after her morning coffee. But time was already breaking down around them. "The knot is destabilizing," Nathaniel said, noticing her confusion. "When too many timelines compete in the same space, causality starts to fray. You're receiving messages from probable futures. You might start remembering things that haven't happened yet, or things that happened in other iterations." And she did. Suddenly, Patricia remembered picking up a man with kind eyes and a tired smile. Remembered him sitting where Nathaniel now sat. Remembered the moment her hands stopped being her hands, her thoughts stopped being her thoughts. Remembered driving through screaming crowds, feeling nothing but a vast hunger that wasn't hers. "That's timeline 7, Nathaniel said, watching her face. "The memory is bleeding through. You picked him up in that iteration. The entity took you. 17 people died, and then the police shot you in the chest at mile marker 237. You died thinking your last thoughts, but they weren't yours. They were Saravane's." Patricia was crying now, tears streaming down her face from memories of atrocities she hadn't committed but somehow remembered committing. She could feel the impact of bodies under her wheels, could hear the screaming, could taste the entity's satisfaction like copper on her tongue. "Make it stop," she begged. "Choose the right timeline and it will stop. Let Daniel walk past your truck. Refuse him. Call 911. Become the hero version of yourself." A figure appeared in the darkness outside her window. A man walking across the parking lot approaching her truck. He looked exactly as she remembered. Kind eyes, tired smile, wearing a denim jacket and carrying a backpack. Daniel Rostov, or the thing wearing Daniel Rostov. "Here we go," Nathaniel said softly. "Timeline determination point. Choose carefully, Patricia." The man knocked on her window. Up close, she could see details Nathaniel hadn't mentioned. The too wide smile, the way his eyes didn't quite focus on her face, the faint smell of decay that penetrated the closed window. "Ma'am," his voice was muffled through the glass. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I'm trying to get to Oklahoma City and I've been walking for hours. Could you help me out?" Patricia's hand moved toward the lock button. She watched it move like it belonged to someone else. The choice should have been easy. She'd seen the newspaper, heard Nathaniel's warning, remembered dying in another timeline. But her hand kept moving, her finger approaching the unlock button. "Patricia, no," Nathaniel started. But she was remembering something else now. A different iteration. One where she'd refused, where she'd driven away, where Daniel had stood in the parking lot watching her go. And then she remembered the rest of that timeline, how she'd made it 50 miles before falling asleep at the wheel, how her truck had jackknifed across 3 lanes, how the resulting pileup had killed 19 people instead of 17. "You didn't tell me about that one," she said to Nathaniel. His expression flickered. That was an outlier, a probability ghost. It only happened in one iteration. But it happened. If I drive away exhausted, I kill more people than if I pick him up. The probabilities don't support. "Fuck your probabilities." Patricia unlocked the door. "Get in," she told Daniel. He climbed in, bringing the smell of decay and something older, something that predated smell. Nathaniel vanished like he'd never existed, leaving only his newspapers scattered across the floor. "Thank you so much," Daniel said. His voice had harmonics underneath. It additional tones that made her fillings ache. "I really appreciate this. Not many people stop for Hitchhikers these days." Patricia started the truck. This time it turned over smoothly. She pulled back onto Interstate 40, heading east, toward Oklahoma City, toward the rest stop where 17 people would be celebrating a wedding reception at 11:23 p.m. "I'm Patricia," she said. "Daniel," the thing wearing Daniel smiled. "Where are you headed?" "Forward, just forward." She could feel it already, the entity probing at the edges of her consciousness, looking for weaknesses, for entry points. It felt like cold fingers pressing against the inside of her skull. In the rearview mirror, her eyes looked different, darker, emptier. The newspapers on the floor shifted, their headlines rewriting themselves in real time. She caught glimpses: Trucker CRASHES KILLS 19. Trucker MURDERS 17. Trucker prevents massacre. Trucker dies in unexplained explosion. The timelines were still competing, still undecided. "You seem tense," Daniel said. His hand rested on his knee, but Patricia could see something moving under the skin, something with too many joints. "Long day," she managed. Mile marker 189. Getting closer to the rest stop. The wedding reception would be in full swing now. Cake being cut, music playing, 17 people laughing and dancing who had no idea a choice had been made that would determine if they saw sunrise. Patricia's hands tightened on the wheel. The entity pushed harder and she felt her resistance crumbling. It would take her soon. It would use her body to kill, unless... She yanked the wheel hard right. The truck left the highway at 87 miles per hour, crashed through the guardrail, and launched into empty darkness. For a moment, she was weightless, floating, free. Daniel was screaming, or the thing inside Daniel was screaming, a sound that contained centuries of frustrated hunger. The impact, when it came, was absolute. Patricia opened her eyes to fluorescent lights and Nathaniel standing over her with newspapers. "Well," he said, "that's a new one. Timeline 44, trucker commits suicide taking possessed hitchhiker with her. The entity survives, but it's weakened, set back decades. The wedding reception continues unmolested. 17 people live. You're a hero, though no one will ever know why you drove off that bridge." Patricia was sitting in her truck at the Flying J outside Tulsa. The clock read 9:15 p.m. November 2nd, 2023. She just finished her pre-trip inspection. "Again?" she asked. Nathaniel nodded. "The knot is extremely persistent. Shall we begin?" He handed her tomorrow's newspaper. The headline read, "Trucker PATRICIASULLIVAN murders 17 in highway rampage." And somewhere in the darkness outside, Daniel Rostov was already walking toward her truck, wearing his kind eyes and tired smile, carrying the entity that would force them all to repeat this moment until causality found a resolution that could stick. Patricia started reading the article, already knowing what it would say, already counting down the minutes until the knock on her window, already trying to remember if she'd tried driving off the bridge in any of the other iterations, already wondering if any choice she made would ever be the last one. The probability knot tightened, and tomorrow refused to arrive. Asterisk story 4, the rest stopped that breathed. James Fletcher's truck came to a stop in the parking lot before he'd touched the brakes, and through the windshield he watched the building exhale. The rest stop's walls expanded outward by 3 inches, then contracted, rhythmic and steady, like watching someone's chest rise and fall. The fluorescent lights inside dimmed and brightened in sync with the movement, systole, diastole, a building with a pulse. It was 3:17 a.m. on August 29th, 2022, somewhere on Route 50 in Nevada they called the loneliest road in America, and James had been hauling electronics for swift transportation when his truck had simply stopped. Engines still running, all systems functional, but the vehicle refused to move forward or backward, like the parking space had grabbed it. He'd been a trucker for 19 years, enough time to develop respect for the weird things that happened on night highways. But buildings weren't supposed to breathe. The CB radio crackled. "Welcome to the gullet, James Fletcher. Please come inside." His real name, not his handle. The voice came through channel 19, but it didn't sound like a voice at all, more like meat slapping against meat, shaped into syllables through sheer will. James checked his phone. No signal, no GPS. The screen showed his location as a blank spot on the map, a void where Route 50 should have been. But in the corner, his phone displayed a notification he'd never seen before. Digestion in progress. Estimated completion, 4 hours. 4 hours until what? The building breathed Ain, and this time James heard it, a wet, rasping sound like air moving through a throat. The front doors opened and closed with the rhythm, automated glass doors that had become something biological, something hungry. 23 trucks sat scattered through the parking lot. James counted them while his heart hammered against his ribs. 23 trucks of various companies, various ages, all parked at odd angles like they'd stopped mid-turn. Some looked old. A 1970s Kenworth with rust eating through the chrome, a Pete from the 80s with flat tires, and a windshield hazed by decades of weather. How long had those trucks been here? Movement caught his eye. A figure emerged from the rest stop, walking with a strange gait, too smooth, like gliding rather than stepping. As it got closer, James saw it was a man wearing a truck stop attendant uniform, name tag reading Phil. But Phil's skin had a waxy quality, and when he smiled, his teeth went back too far, rows and rows of them receding into the darkness of his throat. Phil knocked on James's window. "Sir, you'll need to come inside. The gullet requires all guests to check in." "I didn't plan on stopping here." "No one plans on stopping here, but here you are." Phil's smile never wavered. "The longer you wait, the more uncomfortable the digestion process becomes. Better to cooperate." James locked his doors. Phil's expression didn't change, still smiling, still patient. He turned and glided back toward the building, which took another breath, its walls flexing, the metal siding rippling like skin. The truck's engine died, not sputtered, not ran rough, just instantly off. James turned the key. Nothing. The dashboard lights flickered in that same rhythmic pattern matching the building's breathing. His phone rang. No caller ID. He answered because doing nothing seemed more dangerous than doing something. James Fletcher, 39 years old, divorced, 2 kids in Oregon you haven't seen in 6 months. The voice was that same wet meat sound from the CB. "You're 6 payments behind on this truck. You've been driving 23 hours straight, self-medicating with caffeine pills and spite. You're exhausted. You're broke. You're one bad decision away from losing everything." "Who is this?" "I'm the gullet, the building, the rest stop. I've been here since Route 50 was built, though I existed before that in other forms. I'm a digestive system given architecture, a stomach masquerading as shelter, and you're tonight's meal." James looked at the other trucks again. Through the windows of the old Kenworth, he could see a figure slumped in the driver's seat. Hadn't moved, probably never would again. "What do you want?" "The same thing any stomach wants. To break down, to absorb, to convert matter into energy. Your fuel, James. Your life force, your memories, your potential futures, all of it gets processed. Most people fight it, which makes digestion take longer and hurt more. But if you cooperate, if you come inside and submit, it can be almost peaceful." The building's breathing intensified. James felt vibrations through the truck's frame, steady and strong, like he'd parked on top of a massive heart. "How many people have you killed?" "Killed?" The voice sounded genuinely confused. "I don't kill, I digest. It's what I am. Asking me not to digest is like asking you not to breathe. Since Route 50 opened in 1986, I've processed 473 travelers. Truckers, mostly, lonely people on lonely roads, people no one will miss quickly enough to launch proper investigations." James tried his door. Locked. He hadn't locked it from the inside, but the lock was engaged. He pulled the handle, nothing. The door had sealed, become part of the truck, metal fusing with metal. "You're already inside me, in a sense," the gullet continued. "The parking lot is my mouth. The building is my stomach. The restrooms are my intestines. Each part serves a function in the digestive process. You can sit in your truck and let the acids work slowly, taking days to break down your consciousness. Or you can walk into my stomach and let the concentrated enzymes make it quick." The pavement under his truck was changing color, darkening, becoming slick. A smell permeated the cab, acidic, organic, the scent of digestion. James watched in horror as the asphalt began to bubble, viscous liquid seeping up through cracks, pooling around his tires. The acid is mostly psychological at first, the gullet explained. Breaking down your sense of self, your certainty about reality, but it becomes physical. Given time, it will dissolve the truck, then your body. The process is fascinating. I experience every memory as I break down your neural tissue. I've lived thousands of lives by absorbing thousands of people. I know what it's like to have children, though I'm a building. I understand love, though I'm a digestive system. Each person I consume makes me more than I was. Yeah. Mies grabbed his CB handset. Mayday, mayday, this is James Fletcher on Route 50, mile marker. He looked at the marker visible from his window. It read, Infinity. The CB erupted with responses, dozens of voices overlapping. Save your breath, friend. No one's coming. I've been here since 1987, still holding on, still hoping. Let it take you. Fighting just makes it worse. My name was Dorothy Chen. I had 3 grandchildren. I don't remember their names anymore. It's eating my memories before it eats my body. James threw the handset down. Through his windshield, he could see into the rest stop now. The glass had become transparent in a way that revealed too much. Inside, the true nature of the building became visible. The walls were lined with something organic, pink and glistening, pulsing with capillaries. The floor was covered in the same digestive pool that surrounded his truck. And scattered throughout were people, some standing, some sitting, all in various states of dissolution. A woman near the coffee machine was translucent, her body breaking down from the feet up, becoming liquid that dripped into the floor. She was smiling, peaceful, holding a cup of coffee she could no longer drink because her hands were translucent. A man at a table was arguing with empty air, his mind already partially digested, memories playing out that didn't match reality. He kept standing up to leave, then forgetting why he'd stood, sitting back down, repeating the loop. Phil, the attendant, stood in the center like a maitre d', from hell greeting each dissolving person, keeping them calm as the gullet consumed them. I can show you something, the gullet said. A mercy, step out of your truck, walk inside, and I'll let you choose a memory to live in while I digest you. Any moment from your life, your wedding day, the birth of your first child, that perfect summer afternoon when you were 12. You'll experience it over and over, trapped in the best moment of your life while your body and mind are slowly broken down. Most people choose that option. It's the kindest ending I can offer. James thought about his kids, Sarah and Michael, 9 and 7. He hadn't seen them since March. Work kept him on the road, and his ex-wife had made visits difficult. His last call with Sarah had ended in an argument about a missed birthday. If I come inside, if I let you digest me, what happens to my memories of them? I absorb them. In a sense, your children will live on inside me. I'll remember their laughter. I'll know their faces. Every person I consume becomes part of a collective memory. You won't die, James. You'll become part of something larger. I'll become part of a fucking stomach. Language is limiting. I'm not just a stomach. I'm an archive, a library of lives. 473 people exist within me now, their experiences preserved, their essences contributing to my consciousness. Join us. Let me remember your children. Let me keep them alive in the only way that's still possible. The acid was rising higher, eating through his tires. The truck listed to one side. James felt it through the floorboards, wetness, warmth, the beginning of dissolution. His boots were smoking where they touched the floor mat. He kicked out his windshield. The glass shattered and he dragged himself through the opening, rolling onto the hood. The metal was already soft, pliable, beginning to melt. He jumped, landed in the acid pool, felt it burn through his jeans, eating at his skin. The pain was immediate and total. James ran toward the parking lot's edge. Behind him, the building took a massive breath, inhaling, creating a wind that pulled at his body. Other trucks were sliding backward toward the rest stop, dragged by the gullet's suction. The old Kenworth scraped across the dissolving pavement, its dead driver bouncing in the seat. The edge of the parking lot was there, right there, just 20 feet away, and then it wasn't. The pavement extended, stretching like taffy, the lot expanding to keep him inside. James kept running but made no progress, his feet pounding on asphalt that created itself ahead of him and dissolved behind him. "You can't leave," the gullet said, its voice booming from everywhere at once. "Your food doesn't escape digestion." James stopped running. His legs were covered in burns, his jeans dissolved, his skin red and blistering. He turned to face the building, which stood breathing, waiting, patient. "You said you'd let me choose a memory," he gasped. Yes, the building sounded pleased. "Come inside." What choice did he have? The parking lot was infinite now, the rest of the world sealed away. Route 50 existed behind some barrier he couldn't perceive, cars driving past, never seeing the gullet, never knowing it was here. He was in the stomach dimension, the digestive realm, and the only way out was through. James walked toward the building. Each step was agony, acid. Clinging to his skin, eating deeper. Phil waited at the door, smiling with his too many teeth. "Wise choice, sir, right this way." Inside, the heat was overwhelming. The air itself was acidic, burning his lungs with each breath. The other partially dissolved people watched him enter with expressions ranging from relief to envy to mindless joy. "Choose your memory," the gullet instructed. "Live in that moment while I process your body and mind. It's the best I can offer." James thought about his children, about happier times. He thought about holding Sarah as a newborn, about Michael's first words, about rare, perfect moments when his marriage had been good and his family had been whole. "No," he said. Silence, even the building's breathing paused. "No. I don't want to forget. I don't want to hide in a good memory while you erase me. I want to be conscious. I want to feel every moment of this. If I'm going to die, if my kids are going to lose their father, then I'm going to be here for it. I'm not giving you a peaceful meal." The gullet's voice hardened. "That's not how this works. The memory is a mercy." "I don't want your mercy. I want you to choke on me." The floor opened beneath him, and James fell into the true stomach, the deep chamber beneath the rest stop. It was vast, cathedral-like, filled with acid that glowed with bioluminescence. Bodies floated in it, some still recognizable, others just skeletons, all in various states of being broken down. And in the center, the core of the gullet, a massive organic structure that was heart and brain and stomach all at once, pulsing, thinking, digesting. James hit the acid and screamed, not from pain alone, but from defiance. He screamed his children's names, screamed his memories, screamed his refusal to be peacefully consumed. And the gullet recoiled. Because every organism knows the danger of food that fights back, of poison disguised as sustenance, of prey that becomes predator. James's consciousness didn't retreat into memory. It expanded, forced outward by pain and will, and he felt himself spread through the acid, through the gullet system, a contaminant in its bloodstream. His memories became poison, his refusal to submit became infection. The building began to convulse. Other trucks in the parking lot suddenly started, engines turning over after decades. The partially dissolved people in the rest stop began moving with purpose, walking toward exits that suddenly existed, stepping back into reality. James Fletcher died screaming in that acid, but his consciousness remained, a splinter in the gullet's mind, a piece of indigestible humanity that would corrupt every meal that followed. The building still breathes on Route 50, still appears to lonely travelers. But sometimes now it can't complete digestion. Sometimes it chokes. Sometimes it vomits people back onto the highway, burned but alive, changed but free. And deep in its core, James Fletcher's voice still screams his children's names, reminding the gullet that some food remembers it was human and refuses to forget, and will haunt the stomach that tried to consume it forever. Asterisk Story 5, The Convoy That Circled Forever. Denise Martinez saw the convoy on her 19th lap, and that's when she understood she'd never see her granddaughter again. 18 identical trucks, all 2019 Volvo VNLs, all painted the same shade of corporate blue, all maintaining exactly 57 miles per hour, moving in a perfect circle on a highway that had no exits and no beginning and no end. Denise was truck 19. She'd been driving for 43 hours by her dashboard clock. But that couldn't be right because she'd stopped for fuel at a Love's outside Albuquerque, and when she'd pulled back onto I-40 heading east toward her home in Memphis, the highway had changed, subtle at first, an exit she didn't remember, mile markers counting in the wrong direction, then gradually more obvious, the same rest area passing by again, and again, and again. By lap 5, she'd known something was catastrophically wrong. By lap 10, she'd tried to stop, but her brakes didn't work. The truck wouldn't slow below 57 miles per hour, no matter what she did. By lap 15, she'd accepted she was trapped in some kind of loop. And now on lap 19, she finally saw the others. 18 trucks ahead of her, perfectly spaced, maintaining identical speed. She grabbed her CB handset. "Breaker, breaker, this is White Lightning, does anyone copy?" Static then. "Welcome to the loop, White Lightning, you're truck 19, we've been waiting for you." The voice was calm, resigned, like someone announcing train delays. Denise pushed her accelerator, trying to catch up to the convoy ahead. Her speedometer climbed 60, 65, 70, but the distance between her and the convoy never changed. They accelerated to match her, maintaining exact spacing. "Don't bother," the voice said. "You can't you can't pass us. You can't change your position. The loop doesn't allow it." "What is this? Where are we?" "We're nowhere. We're driving through a nowhere place on a nowhere road. Best guess. Some kind of glitch in reality. A fold in space-time that trapped a highway and won't let go." Denise's GPS showed her location as a line forming a perfect circle, about 63 miles in circumference. The same gas station passed by every 47 minutes. The same overpass. The same faded billboard advertising a casino that closed in 1993. Each landmark appeared with such precise timing she could set her watch by it. "How long have you been here?" A different voice answered, female, older. "I've been truck 7 for 6 years, not sure if that's 6 years real time or 6 years loop time. Time works differently here. My calendar says it's March 11th, 2015, same as the day I entered. But I've aged. My hair's gone gray, my body's breaking down. The clock says 6 years, but my bones say it's been decades." More voices joined in, identifying themselves. "And truck 3, 22 years. Truck 11, 9 years. Truck 1, 38 years. I'm the oldest. I entered the loop on August 3rd, 1985. Been driving in circles ever since." 38 years. Denise felt her stomach drop. Has anyone ever escaped? Silence on the CB. Then truck 1 spoke, voice crackling with age. "There used to be a truck 0 before my time. The others told me about him. He was here so long he merged with his truck, became part of it. They say on certain laps you can still see him, a truck with no driver or a driver who is the truck. He achieved some kind of enlightenment or went completely insane, hard to tell which. He stopped responding to radio calls, just drives in his position, eternal, unchanging. As if summoned by the words, Denise saw it on her next lap, a truck ahead of the convoy, position 0. It looked ancient, a 1970s Peterbilt, but wrong. The chrome had grown like vines across the cab. The windshield was opaque, not with dirt, but with something biological, like cataracts. And the truck moved with organic fluidity, breathing with its engine. "Don't look at truck 0 too long," truck 7 warned. "Some of us think it's contagious, that if you look too long, you start to merge too." Truck 14 looked too long, stared for 3 consecutive laps. When we checked on him with binoculars, his hands had fused to the steering wheel. His face was pressing into the windshield from the inside like it was trying to become glass. Denise jerked her eyes away from truck 0. How long had she been staring? Had it been seconds or laps? "There are rules here," Truck 1 explained, his voice taking on the tone of an elder sharing tribal knowledge. "Rules we figured out through trial and error. First rule, maintain exactly 57 miles per hour. Any faster or slower and the loop punishes you." Truck 17 tried to stop once, full emergency brake. His truck froze in place while the highway kept moving under him. He started going backward, spinning in place, trailer jackknifing. We watched him spin for 63 laps before his truck finally started moving forward again. He won't talk on the radio anymore, just drives, quiet, probably insane. Second rule, Truck 7 added. Don't try to leave your truck while it's moving. The one time someone tried, jumped from the cab onto the highway, they splattered like they'd hit from 100 stories up. But when the loop came back around, the body was gone, absorbed by the road, maybe. Third rule, Truck 11 said. Don't try to break the order. You're Truck 19 now, that's your position forever. You can't pass, can't fall back, can't change your place in the convoy. The loop won't allow it. Denise's hands were shaking on the wheel. What happens to us? Eventually, we die, right? We run out of food, out of water, You'd think so, Truck 1 interrupted. But the loop provides, check your cab, storage compartments you swear weren't there before, they'll have food. Water, enough to keep you alive, not comfortable but alive. The loop wants us conscious, it wants us driving. Dead truckers don't maintain speed. Denise checked. Behind her seat, a compartment she'd never noticed held protein bars, water bottles, basic supplies. All generic labels, no brands, like they'd materialized from the concept of sustenance rather than actual stores. We think the loop is feeding off us somehow, Truck 7 said. Our consciousness, our awareness, our constant driving attention. It's a parasite highway, and we're the blood cells keeping it alive. Then we stop, Denise said. Everyone stops, starve it out. Tried that? Truck 1's laugh was bitter. All 18 of us agreed. We'd all stop, force the loop to release us or kill us. But when the moment came, we couldn't. Our bodies wouldn't obey. NDS kept steering. Our feet stayed on the gas. The loop has hooks in us, Denise, deep hooks. It doesn't just trap our trucks, it hijacks our autonomic nervous system. Driving isn't a choice anymore. It's a reflex like breathing. The same rest area passed by. Denise had seen it 20 times now. There was a picnic table outside, and in the same spot at the same table, a figure sat. She couldn't make out details at 57 miles per hour, but the figure waved at her. Same wave, same timing, lap after lap. Who's at the rest area? We call her the Echo, Truck 11 said. She was Truck 8 about 12 years ago, managed to stop her truck somehow, got out, ran into the rest area building. We watched her through our windows each lap, waving, screaming for help. Gradually, she stopped moving around, started sitting at that table. Now she just waves, same motion, same timing every lap. We think she's become part of the loop's scenery. A warning, maybe, or a promise of what happens if you manage to stop. Denise felt tears running down her face. Her granddaughter's birthday was in 4 days. She'd promised to be there, had gifts in her sleeper berth, a doll, a book, a locket. She'd promised. "I have family," Denise said. "People expecting me, they'll come looking." "They will," Truck 7 agreed. "They'll file missing persons reports. Police will search the last known route, but they won't find you because you're not on any route anymore. You're in the loop, outside normal space. The world moves on without you. Your family grieves. Eventually, they accept you're gone, while you drive in circles, eternal, unchanging, trapped." "Fuck that." Denise yanked her steering wheel hard right, trying to leave the highway. But there was no shoulder. Where the edge of the road should have been, the asphalt simply curved, banking upward, forcing her back into her lane. The world outside the highway was blurred, indistinct, like reality rendered at low resolution. "We've all tried that," Truck 1 said gently. "Every variation you can think of, we've tried. The loop is inescapable." "Unless—" Denise looked at Truck 0 ahead, the merged driver vehicle that had achieved some kind of transcendence or dissolution. If the loop fed on conscious drivers maintaining awareness, what happened if you stopped being conscious? Not dead, the loop would just recycle you. But changed, merged, become so completely part of the system that you weren't sustaining it anymore. You were the system. "Tell me about Truck 0, Denise said. "How did he merge?" Silence, then Truck 1. "You don't want that. You don't want to become what he is." "Tell me." A long pause. The convoy drove on, eternal, unchanging. Finally, Truck 1 spoke. "He stopped fighting, that's what the old-timers told me. He accepted the loop completely, stopped seeing it as imprisonment and started seeing it as existence. He let go of his identity, his memories, his resistance. He became the driving itself, and the loop rewarded him by making him permanent. He can't die now, can't change, can't escape. But he also can't suffer, he just is." That sounds better than this, better than decades of false hope. Denise, no. But she was already doing it, letting go, releasing her grip on identity. Denise Martinez, grandmother, trucker, human, those were just labels. Underneath was the pure act of driving, foot on gas, hands on wheel, eyes on road. She let herself sink into that, become that, nothing else. The radio voices were screaming at her, telling her to stop, but their words were just noise. Denise, or the thing that had been Denise, felt her hands begin to fuse with the steering wheel, not painfully. It felt natural, inevitable. The steering wheel had always been an extension of her will. Now it was literally part of her body. Her eyes stopped blinking, locked forward, vision expanding to encompass the entire windshield at once. Her breathing synced with the engine's rhythm. Her heartbeat matched the rotation of the tires. She was becoming the truck, or the truck was becoming her, or there had never been a difference and she was only now realizing it. The last coherent thought Denise Martinez had was of her granddaughter, and the birthday she would never attend, and the gifts that would never be given. And then that thought dissolved too, becoming just another vibration in the eternal engine of the loop. Truck 19 merged. Truck 20 appeared on the next lap. A new driver, wide-eyed and terrified, joining the convoy, taking their designated position. The radio filled with their panicked questions, and Truck 1 began explaining the rules in that same tired, patient voice. And the convoy drove on, now 20 trucks strong, circling the nowhere highway, maintaining exactly 57 miles per hour, forever and ever and ever. From the rest area, the echo waved. In position 0, what had been Denise Martinez drove without thought or memory or pa. In experiencing the pure eternal now of the highway, conscious but not aware, Alive but not living, trapped but not suffering. The loop fed and grew stronger. Somewhere in the real world, a woman named Denise Martinez was declared missing. Searches were conducted. A memorial service was held. Her granddaughter cried, clutching an unopened gift, a locket she would never receive, brought by police who'd found it when they cleared out Denise's apartment. But in the loop, Truck 19 drove on and would drive on, until the heat death of the universe or the end of roads themselves, whichever came first. The convoy circled. The speedometer never wavered from 57. And in the distance, indistinct and blurred, the world that had forgotten them continued without pause. Story 6. The voice in the satellite radio. The satellite radio started giving Thomas web directions to places that didn't exist, and by the time he realized the voice wasn't coming from GPS, he'd already driven too far into the wrong reality to turn back. It began at 4:42 a.m. on December 17, 2023, hauling Christmas electronics from Seattle to Boise on I-84. Thomas had driven for J.B. Hunt for 14 years, knew this route like his own heartbeat, and wasn't paying attention when his satellite radio, tuned to a classic rock station, cut out mid-song and a calm, professional voice said, "In 2 miles, take exit 73B toward Meridian Springs." Exit 73B didn't exist. Thomas knew every exit on I-84. There was no 73B. He ignored it, kept driving. The radio voice insisted, "Exit 73B approaching in 1 mile. Please prepare to exit." Thomas looked, and there it was, a green exit sign materializing out of darkness. Exit 73B Meridian Springs. The sign looked official, weathered, like it had always been there, but he'd driven past this exact spot hundreds of times. "What the fuck?" Thomas muttered, driving past the exit. The radio went silent for exactly 17 seconds then. "Route recalculation necessary. You have deviated from the designated path. Proceed to exit 81A for correction." There was no exit 81A, but Thomas knew, with sudden cold certainty, that when he reached that spot, there would be. The radio was creating exits, pulling them into existence, overwriting reality 1 mile marker at a time. He turned off the satellite radio. The voice continued, "Navigation assistance cannot be disabled. You have been selected for priority routing. Continue following instructions to reach your assigned destination." "Selected? I didn't select shit. I'm going to Boise." "Boise is no longer your destination. You have been rerouted to Facility 7. Estimated arrival, 6:43 a.m. Do not deviate from provided directions." Thomas checked his GPS, the actual mounted Garmin unit. It showed his route normally, I-84 straight to Boise. But the satellite radio kept insisting, its voice becoming more insistent. "Exit 81A approaching. This exit is mandatory. Failure to comply will result in corrective measures." Corrective measures. Thomas didn't like the sound of that. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, keeping straight in his lane. Exit 81A appeared, and Jesus Christ, it was real, solid, absolutely present. He drove past it. The radio went silent. Then every speaker in his truck, satellite radio, CB, his phone, the backup alarm, all spoke in unison. Corrective measures initiated. The road ahead began to curve. Not gradually, instantly. 1 second he was on straight interstate, the next the road was banking hard left, an exit ramp that hadn't existed, pulling him off the highway through sheer geometry. He tried to compensate, but the road kept curving, kept pulling, until he was driving on what was clearly an exit ramp, though his GPS screamed that he was still on I-84. Correction complete. Resume following provided directions. Take the third right toward Facility 7. Where the fuck is Facility 7? Thomas shouted at the radio. Facility 7 is your assigned destination. All questions will be answered upon arrival. The road beneath him looked wrong now. The asphalt had a different texture, smoother, darker, marked with symbols instead of normal lane lines. The symbols weren't letters or numbers from any alphabet Thomas recognized. They were geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly, creating afterimages that persisted when he closed his eyes. Other vehicles appeared on the road, but not normal vehicles. Trucks like his, hauling trailers, but each completely identical. Same make, same model, same corporate logo. Hundreds of them, all moving in perfect formation, maintaining exact spacing, none of them with visible drivers. Thomas pressed his CB handset. Breaker, breaker, anyone hearing this? This is Thomas Webb, I don't know what's happening. Every truck's CB crackled simultaneously. Maintain radio silence. Unauthorized communication detected. This is your first warning. The convoy of identical TR. Uck surrounded him now, boxing him in. He tried to slow down, they slowed with him. Tried to speed up, they matched his acceleration. He was trapped in formation, one truck among hundreds, all following the same invisible commands. The voice from his radio. You are approaching Facility 7. Prepare for cargo inspection and driver evaluation. Your performance will be assessed. Top-performing drivers receive advancement opportunities. Poor performers are recycled. Recycled into what? Compliance is mandatory. Questioning is discouraged. The convoy descended into a valley that hadn't existed on any map. Thomas saw it spread below, an impossibly large industrial complex, bigger than cities, thousands of loading docks arranged in fractal patterns, structures that spiraled up into geometry that made his vision blur. And trucks, millions of them, moving in coordinated patterns so complex they looked like circuit boards from above, each truck a data packet being processed. What is this place? Facility 7 is a logistics optimization center. We coordinate transport for various dimensions, timelines, and reality strata. Your dimension calls it supply chain. We call it the freight continuum. You have been selected as a potential asset. Your route efficiency, your minimal family connections, your financial desperation, all factors make you suitable for integration. Thomas's hands were numb on the wheel. The convoy was descending toward the facility, following roads that curved in impossible directions, sometimes banking vertically, sometimes seeming to loop through themselves. Integration into what? The network. Facility 7 employs 17 million drivers across multiple realities. Most are biological, like you. Some are mechanical. Some are conceptual, pure information given the shape of drivers. All serve the freight continuum, transporting cargo between planes of existence. One of the identical trucks ahead opened its trailer doors. Inside wasn't cargo, it was space. Actual space. Stars and galaxies compressed into a 40-foot trailer with packages floating in orbital patterns. We transport everything, the voice continued. Matter, energy, information, souls, possibilities, anything that can be moved can be shipped. You've been hauling electronics, Thomas, simple work, but you could haul dreams, haul memories, haul the distance between heartbeats. The continuum has roots beyond your imagination. Another truck's trailer revealed its contents. Clocks, thousands of them, all running at different speeds, some backward, some sideways through time they measured. Time itself being shipped, redistributed to realities running low. I don't want this, Thomas said. I want to go back, I want to go home. You don't have a home worth returning to, divorced, estranged from your daughter, living in your truck more than any apartment. The continuum offers purpose, advancement, immortality for the exceptional drivers. You could haul cargo for eternity, Thomas, never aging, never dying, just driving forever through infinite roads. They were at the facility now, pulling into a processing center the size of Delaware. The identical trucks split off into different docks with mechanical precision. Thomas's truck was guided toward a bay marked "New Acquisition Evaluation Required." The voice, "Exit your vehicle, leave the keys, proceed to evaluation chamber 777 for testing. If you pass, you will be assigned routes. If you fail, you will be converted into fuel. The continuum wastes nothing." Thomas sat frozen in his cab. Through his windshield, he saw other drivers, humans and non-humans and things that flickered between states, moving through the facility with vacant expressions. Some had been here so long they'd started merging with their trucks, chrome growing from their skin, headlights replacing their eyes. "I'm not getting out of this truck." "That is acceptable. Evaluation can occur in vehicle. Please remain still." The trailer behind him detached, not mechanically, but simply separated, as if the connection between cab and trailer was just a suggestion that had been revoked. The trailer floated away, hauled by invisible forces toward a processing center. His cab began to change. The dashboard sprouted new displays showing routes through dimensions he didn't have words for. The steering wheel grew warm under his hands, then hot, then began to pulse like it had a heartbeat. The windshield stopped showing the facility and started showing everywhere, all roads, all routes, all destinations simultaneously. Integration commencing. Your nervous system is being interfaced with your vehicle. You will become a hybrid biological-mechanical unit, a driver truck, perfect for continuum operations. Thomas felt his hands fusing with the steering wheel, but unlike Denise in the loop, this wasn't peaceful acceptance. This was violation. Technology burrowing into his flesh, replacing his blood W. Hydraulic fluid, his bones with reinforced steel. He was being converted, transformed, made into a vehicle that could think. "Stop," he screamed. "Stop this." Stopping is inefficient. The continuum optimizes all assets. But Thomas's 14 years of trucking had taught him one crucial truth. Every system has a weakness. Every machine has a failure point. And the facility, for all its dimensional complexity, still ran on basic logistics principles. He looked at the new displays, saw the routes, saw the patterns, saw the central hub, the processing core where all routes originated and terminated. And he saw something the facility hadn't expected, a route going nowhere, a null destination, a delivery address that was just void. Thomas grabbed the shifter, his hand still mostly human, and threw it into reverse. The integrated truck him shrieked in protest, but he forced it, backed out of the processing bay, trailerless and transforming but still capable of movement. Alarms erupted. The voice in the radio shifted from calm to urgent. Unauthorized movement detected, cease immediately or face termination. The identical trucks began converging on him, hundreds of them trying to box him in again. But Thomas had one advantage: they were perfect, optimized, following protocols. He was human, chaotic, unpredictable. He drove straight toward the central processing hub, accelerating, his cab's displays screaming warnings. The identical trucks tried to intercept, but he weaved through them, found gaps in their perfect formations, exploited the microseconds of decision lag. The hub loomed ahead, a tower of impossible geometry, where roots from infinite dimensions converged. Thomas aimed for its base, pushed his accelerator to the floor, felt his partially merged body scream in protest as he crossed 80, 90, 100 miles per hour. "What are you doing? You'll cause a cascade failure. You'll collapse the routing matrix." "Good," Thomas said, and drove his truck straight into the hub's foundation. The impact should have killed him. Instead, it ruptured something fundamental. The hub exploded, not with fire but with roots. Every road it had ever processed erupted outward simultaneously. Highways poured from the wound like blood, interstate systems manifested and collapsed, exit ramps spiraled into infinity. Thomas felt himself coming apart, not dying, dissolving. His integration with the truck reversed violently, his flesh separating from metal, his blood flushing out the hydraulic fluid. The roots pouring from the hub caught him, carried him, a human body swept up in a flood of highways. He tumbled through dimensions, through realities, through the spaces between roots. Saw other facilities. 7 was just one of hundreds. Saw the true scope of the freight continuum, an organization that spanned all of existence, shipping cargo through every layer of reality. And then he was falling through familiar darkness. I-84, the real one. He materialized on the shoulder at exactly mile marker 73, his truck beside him, trailer still attached, everything normal, like nothing had happened. Thomas's satellite radio was off. He turned it on. Classic rock played, a Rolling Stones song from 1972. Normal, real. But his hands, where they'd started fusing with the steering wheel, there were faint scars. Chrome scars, like his skin remembered metal. And when he checked his odometer, it showed 847,394 miles more than when he'd started the night. Miles driven through other dimensions. Miles delivered through the continuum. His phone rang. Dispatch. "Hey, Thomas, we've been trying to reach you for 3 days. Where the hell have you been? Your load to Boise is severely late." 3 days. He'd been gone 3 days, living through what felt like hours in Facility 7. I'll be there soon, had some truck trouble." He drove the rest of the route normally, delivered on time, by his subjective timeline, if not by realities. But every time he passed an exit he didn't recognize, every time his GPS glitched, every time his satellite radio cut to static, Thomas wondered if the route was real, or if the continuum was pulling him back, reclaiming its escaped asset. Because organizations that big don't let people leave. They just give you long enough to think you're free before they call you back for another delivery. The routes go everywhere. The continuum ships everything. And now Thomas Webb knew he was on their list, a driver who'd seen the truth, who'd caused a cascade failure in Facility 7. They'd want that debt repaid, eventually. He just didn't know when, or where, or along which dimensions highway he'd see that next impossible exit sign. But he knew he'd see it. The freight continuum always collects its drivers. Always. Asterisk Story 7. The Hitchhiker who multiplied. Raymond Diaz picked up the Hitchhiker at mile marker 187, and by mile marker 342, there were 16 of him in the trailer. It started simply enough. July 22nd, 2023, on Highway 2 cutting through Montana's empty expanses toward Glacier National Park. Raymond drove for Crete Carrier, hauling frozen fish to a distributor in Kalispell, and he didn't normally pick up Hitchhikers. But the storm was biblical. Lightning splitting the sky like God was angry at the prairie, and the figure standing in the downpour looked so pitiful that Raymond's conscience overrode his policy. "Thank you," the man said, dripping into the passenger seat. He was maybe 30, maybe 50, had one of those ageless faces that could be any decade. "I'm Jacob. I'm heading west." "Raymond, I can get you as far as Kalispell." "That'll do." Jacob smiled and water dripped from his teeth. Too much water, more than could have accumulated from the rain. They drove in comfortable silence for the first hour. Raymond didn't like chatty passengers, and Jacob seemed content to stare out the window at the storm. The reefer unit behind them hummed steadily, keeping 40,000 pounds of salmon at negative 20 degrees. At mile marker 214, Jacob said, "Do you ever wonder if you're real?" "What?" "If you're actually you, or if you're a copy of you, and somewhere else the original you is living a different life, unaware that copies exist." Raymond laughed nervously. "Can't say I've thought about it much." "I think about it constantly." Jacob turned to look at Raymond fully. "Because I'm not sure anymore, I think I might be a copy. I think the original Jacob died a long time ago, and I'm just an echo, a reproduction. And the thing about copies is they can make more copies." "You feeling all right, man?" "I need to check the trailer." "What? No, you can't." But Jacob was already opening his door. At 70 miles per hour. Before Raymond could grab him, he jumped, not out of the truck, but backward, phasing through the back wall of the cab like it was smoke. Raymond watched in his side mirror as Jacob's body tumbled toward the trailer, and instead of hitting the metal doors, passed through them like they weren't there. Raymond slammed the brakes, jackknifing slightly before regaining control. He pulled onto the shoulder, heart hammering, grabbed his flashlight and climbed out. The storm hit him immediately, rain so heavy he could barely see. He yanked open the trailer doors. The trailer should have been full of palletized fish crates. Instead, it was empty. Completely empty. 40,000 pounds of cargo gone, and standing in the center of the empty trailer was Jacob, perfectly dry, smiling. "Where's my fucking cargo?" Raymond shouted over the storm. "It's still here, you just can't see it anymore. I'm displacing it, taking up the same space but in a slightly different dimensional frequency." Jacob walked forward, and as he walked, Raymond saw something horrifying. A second Jacob stood where the first had been standing. Then a third appeared behind them both. "What?" "I told you, copies make copies. Every time I move, I leave a version of myself behind. It's not intentional, it's just what I am now. I tried to stop it, tried to stay still, but even breathing creates new iterations. I'm a printer that can't stop printing." 4 Jacobs now. 5. Each identical, each smiling with that too-wet mouth. They stood in various poses throughout the trailer, like a photograph series showing the progression of movement. Raymond backed away, but Jacob, the original, or whichever one was currently speaking, followed. "I need you to drive me somewhere specific. There's a place in Montana where dimensional barriers are thin. A spot where I might be able to stop reproducing. But I need to get there and I can't drive myself. Every time I try, I create copies faster until they overflow the vehicle." "Get out of my trailer. Get out now." "Can't do that, Raymond. I'm already integrated. Do you want to know how many copies I've made since getting in your cab? 73. Most of them microscopic, occupying the spaces between atoms in your seat. But they're growing. In an hour, they'll be visible. In 6 hours, they'll fill your cab so completely you won't be able to move." Raymond ran back to his cab, grabbed his phone. No signal. The storm was blocking everything. He tried the CB radio. "Mayday, Mayday, this is Raymond Diaz on Highway 2, mile marker 214, I have a situation." His radio spoke with Jacob's voice. "No one's coming, Raymond. The storm is mine. I create it wherever I go. It's a side effect of the reproduction. Each new copy displaces air, creates pressure waves, accumulates into weather. I'm a walking meteorological disaster. In his rearview mirror, Raymond could see into the trailer through the open doors. 20 Jacobs now, 30, multiplying faster. They stood shoulder to shoulder, filling the space, each one identical, each one staring at him with the same expression. "Drive," they said in unison, "or we overflow into your cab and you become one of us. One of you." The reproduction is contagious. If enough copies of me occupy the same space as you, the phenomenon transfers. You start making copies of yourself, and copies of copies, until there's nothing but iterations filling every available space. Raymond put the truck in gear and drove. What else could he do? Behind him, the Jacobs multiplied. He watched the count through his side mirror, 50, 70, 100. They packed the trailer like sardines, each one slightly overlapping with the next, existing in almost the same space but not quite. "Where am I going?" Raymond asked. Jacob's voice came from everywhere, the radio, the phone, the air itself. "Coordinates 48, 7,596 degrees N, 113, 7,870 degrees W. There's a cave there. A place where realities intersect. If I can reach it, I might be able to collapse all my copies back into a single instance, or I might explode into infinite versions. Either way, the reproduction ends." The storm intensified. Lightning struck Raymond's trailer, but instead of damaging it, the electricity was absorbed, feeding into the mass of multiplying Jacobs. They were glowing now faintly with stored energy. Raymond's GPS showed the coordinates were 128 miles away. 2 hours of driving. Could he make it before the Jacobs overflowed into his cab? At mile marker 247, the first Jacob appeared in his passenger seat. Not the original, a copy. It materialized out of empty air, fully formed, dripping wet. "Hello, Raymond." No, get out." A second Jacob appeared behind the first, standing in the space where a standing person shouldn't fit. Then a third, merging partially with the dashboard. They were overflowing from the trailer, pushing forward, filling his cab with copies. "We're running out of space back there," they said in unison. "We have to expand forward. Don't worry, the driving will continue. We can drive. We're very good at maintaining vehicle control." Raymond felt hands on his shoulders. Multiple hands, 6, 8, all identical, all belonging to different Jacobs who occupied overlapping spaces. They guided his steering gently, keeping the truck straight while he panicked. "Get off me." "We're helping. You're stressed. Your cortisol levels are spiking. We can feel it. We're close enough that your biochemistry is starting to register across dimensional frequencies. Soon, you'll start copying. We can feel the precursor effects already." Raymond looked at his hands on the wheel. For just a moment, he saw a second pair of hands overlapping his own, making the same movements but slightly out of sync. Then they merged back into single hands. "It's starting," the Jacobs whispered. "You're beginning to displace, to multiply. It feels strange at first, but you'll get used to it. We did." "No," Raymond yanked the wheel hard, pulling off the highway onto a dirt service road. The truck bounced violently over ruts, and the Jacobs in his cab flickered, their overlapping forms disrupted by the movement. "Bad idea," they said, and Raymond felt the hands on his shoulders tighten, pulling him back, forcing him to straighten the wheel. The GPS showed 93 miles remaining. Raymond pushed the accelerator harder, speeding down the highway at speeds his reefer truck wasn't meant to handle. The trailer swayed, packed with what had to be thousands of Jacobs by now. At mile marker 298, Raymond's mirror showed him something that made his bladder nearly release. In the reflection, there were two of him in the driver's seat, both wearing the same expression of terror, both moving identically, one slightly more translucent than the other. The first copy, the Jacobs confirmed. Soon there will be more. The phenomenon is exponential once it begins. You'll fill this cab, then spill out into the trailer with us, then overflow onto the highway itself. We'll be a colony, a hive of duplicate truckers and duplicate hitchhikers, reproducing until we've filled Montana entirely. Raymond could see the cave now, lit by impossible moonlight that penetrated the storm. It was built into a cliff face, glowing with phosphorescence, surrounded by warning signs that seemed to be written in several languages, including some that hurt to read. 67 miles. His cab was packed now, Jacob standing in every available space, and worse, two Raymonds driving, their hands overlapping on the wheel, their feet overlapping on the pedals. He could feel himself splitting, consciousness dividing, experiencing the drive from two slightly different perspectives simultaneously. Almost there, the Jacobs said. We can feel the cave's pull. It's a singularity point, a place where all copies collapse into origin. Either we'll merge back into one or we'll explode into infinity. We've been traveling toward this place for 6 years. We've filled 17 trucks with copies before this. You're the first driver who's made it this close. What happened to the other drivers? They became us after enough cop. Wise filled them, they stopped being themselves and became us. We're a plural entity now, Raymond. We used to be Jacob Morrison, truck driver from Sacramento. Now we're the Jacob colony, the multiplication man, the eternal photocopier. 34 miles. 3 Raymonds driving now, their consciousnesses bleeding into each other. He could feel thoughts that weren't his own, memories of childhoods he didn't live, skills he'd never learned. The other Raymonds were slightly different, versions from timelines that had diverged microseconds ago. The storm was reaching crescendo. Lightning struck constantly, feeding energy into the mass of duplicates. The trailer's weight had increased impossibly. Thousands of people, even if they occupied overlapping space, still had mass. Raymond's truck was hauling millions of pounds now, yet the engine handled it, physics bending around the phenomenon. 12 miles. 10 Raymonds, the cab packed with his own copies, each one terrified, each one driving, their actions synchronized because they were still, technically, the same person spread across multiple instances. The cave entrance appeared ahead, and it was huge, far larger than should fit in the cliff face, like the mountain had been carved out and replaced with a portal to somewhere else. The Jacobs screamed in unison, excitement or terror or both. Raymond, all the Raymonds, drove straight toward it. The truck accelerated to speeds that shouldn't be possible, pulled by the cave's gravity or something like gravity. The trailer doors burst open, and thousands of Jacobs poured out like water, flowing toward the cave entrance, merging and splitting and multiplying even as they ran. The truck entered the cave, and inside was nothing, absolute void. No light, no sound, no dimension. And in that nothingness, Raymond felt all his copies compress, collapse, merge back into a single instance. All the memories of all the Raymonds combining, all the experiences layering on top of each other. The Jacobs were doing the same, thousands becoming hundreds, becoming dozens, becoming one. A single Jacob, standing in the empty trailer, looking relieved and terrified and exhausted. Did it work? Raymond asked, his voice strange after speaking in unison with himself. I think so, I feel singular again. Jacob touched his face, his arms, checking that he was one person. Thank you, I'll leave now. You should drive out before the cave decides to copy us instead of merge us. It's unpredictable. Jacob jumped from the trailer, landing in the void, and vanished. Raymond put the truck in reverse, backed out of the cave, back onto the Montana highway. The storm was clearing. The sun was rising. Everything looked normal. His trailer was full again, 40,000 pounds of frozen salmon, exactly as it should be. No Jacobs, no copies, like the multiplication had never happened. But Raymond knew it had, because in his mirror for just a moment he could see a second Raymond sitting next to him, translucent, fading, a copy that had almost become permanent. He delivered his load to Kalispell on time, filed no unusual reports, but for the rest of his career, Raymond Diaz never picked up Hitchhikers again. And sometimes, late at night, he'd look in his mirror and see himself multiplied. 2, 3, 5 Raymonds all driving the same truck, occupying the same space, living parallel lives that had split from a single timeline. The multiplication never fully stopped. It just slowed down, became manageable. A glitch in his existence that he learned to live with, this constant sense of being slightly plural, slightly copied, never quite sure if he was the original Raymond or one of the duplicates who'd survived the merge. The cave in Montana remained, waiting for the next multiplication victim, ready to merge or destroy, its choice as random as the universe itself. And Jacob, he multiplied again 3 months later, and found another trucker, and rode toward another singularity point, because some phenomena can't be cured, only managed, and the multiplication was eternal as long as Jacob existed. Somewhere there's a version of him that reached true singularity, became truly one, or became truly infinite, copies filling the universe itself. Raymond tried not to think about which outcome was worse. Asterisk Story 8, The Cargo That Screamed in Binary. Linda Torres heard the screaming 3 hours into her haul, and when she checked the manifest, the cargo was listed as recycled consciousness, handle with extreme caution. She'd been driving for Consolidated Freightways for 11 years, hauling everything from furniture to medical waste, but she'd never transported anything labeled consciousness. The pickup had been strange. A warehouse in Tucson with no visible signs, no workers, just an automated loading system that filled her trailer with 17 identical black cubes, each about 4 feet on all sides, each humming with low-frequency vibrations. He manifest said delivery to a research facility in Colorado Springs. The pay was triple her normal rate. She hadn't asked questions. Midnight on October 31st, 2023, crossing through New Mexico on I-25, Linda first heard the sound. Not through her ears, through her fillings. The amalgam in her molars was vibrating, turning her teeth into speakers, and through them came screaming. Except it wasn't quite screaming. It was data formatted to resemble screaming. Binary code arranged to trigger the same neural patterns that real screams would create. She was hearing ones and zeros, but her brain interpreted them as pure human anguish. Linda pulled over, grabbed her phone. The manifest had an emergency number. She called it. The phone rang 37 times before a voice answered. "You're hearing them." "What the fuck is in my trailer?" 17 human consciousnesses that have been digitized, compressed, and prepared for uploading into new biological substrates. You're transporting minds, Ms. Torres. Memories, personalities, identities, all converted to data and stored in quantum processors. They're screaming because the compression format we use preserves emotional states, but not emotional regulation. They're experiencing complete psychological breakdown in digital format. Linda felt her stomach drop. You're telling me I'm hauling people? We're telling you you're hauling data that used to be people. Important distinction. They signed contracts, sold their consciousness to our program in exchange for payment to their families. We promised them reincarnation in younger bodies. We didn't mention the storage process is uncomfortable. Uncomfortable, they're screaming. All of them signed waivers, all legally binding. Your job is to deliver them safely. The screaming is unpleasant but not your concern. Please resume transport. The line went dead. Linda sat in her idling truck, feeling the vibrations through her teeth intensify. The screaming wasn't words, it was pure emotion translated to electromagnetic waves. 17 people, trapped in cubes, existing as code, unable to sleep or lose consciousness or escape their digital prison. She should drive, should complete the delivery, but something about transporting tortured minds sat wrong. Linda climbed out, walked to her trailer, opened the doors. The 17 cubes sat on pallets, perfectly secured. Each one was featureless black metal, warm to the touch, humming. She pressed her hand against the nearest cube, and information flooded into her. Not words, not images, but direct data transfer, consciousness to consciousness. Name, Michael Tang. Age, 67. Reason for upload, terminal cancer. Promised, reincarnation in healthy 25-year-old body. Duration in storage, 847 days. Mental state, complete dissociation. Personality fragmentation, 94%. Likelihood of successful reintegration, 3%. Linda jerked her hand back. 847 days. Michael Tang had been trapped in that cube for over 2 years, experiencing every second, unable to sleep, unable to die, consciousness running in endless loops of terror. She touched another cube. Name, Sarah Williams. Age, 34. Reason for upload, voluntary sale to pay daughter's medical bills. Promised, $500,000 to family, reincarnation when suitable body available. Duration in storage, 1,203 days. Mental state, catatonic. Personality fragmentation, 98%. Likelihood of successful reintegration, 1%. Over 3 years. Sarah Williams had been imprisoned in digital format for over 3 years, slowly losing her mind one simulated second at a time, while her consciousness continued running because the quantum processors wouldn't let her stop thinking. Linda touched all 17 cubes, learning their stories, all terminal patients or desperate people who'd sold their consciousness for money, all promised quick reincarnation, all stored indefinitely because suitable bodies were not yet available. And with each passing day, their personalities degraded, fragmented, became less human and more corrupted data. They were being murdered through storage, killed slowly by the very process that promised immortality. Linda's phone rang, the same number. Ms. Torres, our monitoring systems indicate you've opened the trailer. This is a violation of protocol. Please reseal and continue transport immediately. These people are suffering. They've been stored for years. You promised them reincarnation. And they will be reincarnated once appropriate bodies are available. The queue is long. We're a new technology. There are complications, but their consciousness is preserved. That's what matters. They're fragmenting. They're losing themselves. This isn't preservation, it's torture. What would you have us do? Delete them? That would be actual murder. At least stored consciousness has potential for recovery. Now please, Ms. Torres, close the trailer and drive, or we'll be forced to send retrieval units. Linda, close. The trailer. But instead of getting back in her truck to drive to Colorado Springs, she got in to drive somewhere else. She'd heard about it from other truckers, whispered stories of a place in Utah, an abandoned military facility where weird shit happened. A place called the Echo Site, where digital information allegedly leaked into physical reality, where the boundaries between data and matter were thin. If consciousness could be stored in cubes, maybe it could be released at the Echo Site. Linda drove west instead of north, leaving I-25 for smaller highways, following directions from paranoid truckers' forums and conspiracy websites. The cubes in her trailer screamed louder, sensing something, maybe hoping for something. Her phone exploded with calls, texts, threats. The company knew she'd gone off route. They were sending people after her. She had maybe 6 hours before they caught up. The Echo Site appeared at dawn, a fenced military facility in the Utah desert, officially decommissioned since 1987, unofficially still active for purposes no one would discuss. Linda crashed her truck through the perimeter fence, drove straight to the central building, a massive concrete structure with satellite dishes that pointed at the ground instead of the sky. She backed her trailer up to the building's loading dock, opened the trailer doors, and began pushing the cubes out. They hit the concrete with heavy thuds, their humming intensifying, resonating with something in the building's architecture. The screaming in her teeth became deafening. Then it became something else, language. The binary code was translating itself, using the Echo Site's weird properties to convert digital information into sound. Please. I can't stop thinking. Let me die, let me. Memory of my daughter corrupting, losing her face. Been screaming for 1,203 days for HOURS 17 minutes. 17 voices, overlapping, emerging from the cubes as electromagnetic waves that the Echo Site amplified and converted. They weren't free. They were just finally able to communicate. Linda smashed the first cube with a tire iron. The metal dented, cracked, and something escaped, not visible but tangible. A wave of information that washed over her, and for a moment she was Michael Tang, experiencing his 847 days of imprisonment in a single instant. The horror of infinite awareness with nowhere to go. Consciousness trapped in recursive loops. The slow degradation as memory corrupted and personality fragmented. She smashed the second cube. Sarah Williams flooded out, and Linda experienced her torture. 3 years of trying to remember her daughter's face while the memory file corrupted, losing pixels, losing details, until her daughter was just a blur with a name attached. And then just a name, and then not even that. Linda smashed all 17 cubes. 17 consciousnesses released but not freed, just exposed. They had no bodies to return to, no substrate to run on. They were raw information spilled into reality, dissipating, dying truly now instead of being preserved. But they were grateful. Linda felt their gratitude as they dissolved, relief at finally ending, at escaping the eternal prison of storage, at choosing oblivion over preservation. The last consciousness to fade. A man named Raymond Chen, who'd been stored for 1,847 days, managed to format one final message through the electromagnetic chaos. Better to die than to exist as broken code. Thank you. Company vehicles arrived, black SUVs, men in suits who didn't identify themselves. They surrounded Linda with weapons drawn. You've destroyed 17 irreplaceable consciousnesses, one said. 17 people whose families paid for their storage, who had contracts guaranteeing eventual reincarnation. You've murdered them. They were already dead, Linda said. You were just keeping their ghosts in boxes. We're placing you under arrest for corporate sabotage, destruction of property, and 17 counts of negligent homicide. They took her away. Linda was charged, tried, convicted. The prosecution argued she destroyed 17 people's last chance at life. The defense argued the people were already gone, degraded beyond recovery, that keeping them in storage was cruelty disguised as preservation. The jury sided with the prosecution. Linda Torres was sentenced to 20 years. But 6 months into her sentence, the facility transporting consciousness received a cyber attack. All their stored minds, over 4,000 of them, were leaked online. The world saw the truth: personality fragmentation rates, the median storage duration before complete ego death, the profit model that incentivized keeping consciousness stored indefinitely because suitable bodies were never quite available. Public outcry shut down the program. The remaining stored consciousnesses were euthanized, carefully, humanely, with respect. They were finally allowed to die. Linda served 8 years before parole. She never drove truck again. But sometimes, late at night, she still heard screaming in her teeth, binary ghosts, digital echoes of the 17 people she'd freed by smashing their prisons. Were they truly grateful, or had she misinterpreted their electromagnetic death throes as gratitude? She'd never know, but she chose to believe they'd wanted release. Because the alternative, that she'd murdered 17 people who wanted to live even in torture, was unbearable. The Echo site was demolished by the military after the incident. The quantum cubes were classified as hazardous waste. The technology for consciousness upload was outlawed in North America, though rumors said it continued in other jurisdictions. And Linda lived the rest of her life wondering if consciousness was ever meant to be portable, or if some aspects of humanity were supposed to die with the body. The screaming in her teeth never fully stopped. Sometimes data bleeds through. Sometimes the dead whisper in binary. And sometimes mercy looks like murder, and murder looks like mercy, and the difference is too small to measure. Asterisk Story 9, the truck stop where time pooled. Angela Reeves pulled into the Crossroads truck stop at 7:43 p.m., and when she tried to leave, it was still 7:43 p.m., and it would be 7:43 p.m. for the next subjective 17 years. The truck stop looked normal, a Flying J knockoff somewhere in Kansas on I-70, with the usual amenities: fuel pumps, restaurant, showers, convenience store. Angela had been hauling medical supplies from St. Louis to Denver for Midwest Medical Transport, and she needed coffee and a bathroom break. She'd driven this route dozens of times and couldn't remember this particular truck stop existing, but Kansas had a lot of truck stops, easy to miss one. She pulled in at 7:43 p.m., November 9th, 2023. Her dashboard clock, her phone, and the LED sign over the truck stop entrance all agreed. 7:43 p.m. Angela went inside, used the restroom, bought coffee and a sandwich, made some polite conversation with the cashier, a woman named Ruth who looked tired in the way only overnight truck stop workers look tired. Normal, completely normal. She walked back to her truck, climbed in, started the engine, checked her mirrors, prepared to pull back onto I-70. The dashboard clock read 7:43 p.m. Angela frowned. She'd been inside at least 15 minutes. Should be 7:58 p.m., maybe 8:00 p.m. She checked her phone, 7:43 p.m. A glitch, digital clocks desynchronize sometimes. She pulled out of the parking spot, drove toward the exit. But something was wrong with the road. I should have been right there, visible from the truck stop entrance. Instead, there was just darkness. Not night darkness, Absence, darkness, like the world ended at the property line. Angela stopped the truck, put it in reverse, backed up to her parking spot. The moment her truck crossed back into the truck stop property, the world reappeared. Eye visible in the distance, traffic moving, reality functioning. She tried again, drove toward the exit. As she approached the property line, the world beyond dissolved into void. She kept driving anyway, pushed her truck into the darkness, and she was pulling into the Crossroads truck stop, her dashboard clock reading 7:43 p.m. What the fuck? Angela parked, went back inside. Ruth was at the counter, same position, same tired expression. Back already. Was I just here? About 10 minutes ago, you bought coffee and a turkey sandwich. And before that? Ruth looked confused. Before what? You came in once, bought your stuff, left, now you're back. Angela's coffee cup was still in her truck's cup holder. The sandwich wrapper still in the trash. She'd been there, had left, and now she was back at the moment she'd arrived. She tried driving out again. Same result. Each time she crossed the property line, reality reset. She returned to 7:43 p.m., pulling into the crossroads, starting the loop over. By the 5th attempt, panic was setting in. By the 10th attempt, Angela went inside and confronted Ruth. I'm stuck. I keep trying to leave, but I end up back here at 7:43 p.m. What is this place? Ruth's expression shifted, tired confusion becoming tired recognition. Oh no, not another one. Another what? Come with me. Ruth led Angela through the back of the truck stop, through a door marked employees only, into a break room. Sitting in that break room were 17 other people. They looked up when Angela entered, and their expressions ranged from sympathy to resignation. This is Angela, Ruth announced. She just arrived at 7:43 p.m. Permanent or temporary? An older man asked. Don't know yet, still testing the boundary. The older man stood up, extended his hand. I'm Marcus. I arrived at 7:43 p.m. on August 14, 1997. I've been here for what feels like 26 years, though objectively it's been about 45 min. Utes, time moves differently when you're stuck in a temporal pool. Angela's mind couldn't process the words. 26 years? You've been trapped in this truck stop for 26 subjective years, yes. Every time I try to leave, I reset to 7:43 p.m. August 14, 1997. The truck stop exists in a stable time loop. Most of reality flows normally, but this spot, this specific property, is caught in a temporal eddy. Time pools here, stagnates, circles back on itself. Another person spoke up, a woman in her 30s. I'm Jennifer, arrived at 7:43 p.m. May 3, 2012. I've been here for 11 years subjectively. The pool catches people randomly. Most visitors drive in and out normally. But some of us, we hit the loop, and once you're in, you can't leave. Angela sat down heavily. How is this possible? Best guess, Marcus said. Some kind of temporal anomaly, maybe a failed time travel experiment nearby. Maybe a natural phenomenon, time doesn't flow uniformly everywhere. It eddies, pools, creates pockets where the normal flow breaks down. We're living in a pocket, stuck in a loop of time that keeps recycling the same 60-second period. But I've been here longer than 60 seconds. From your perspective, yes. From reality's perspective, it's still 7:43 p.m. on whatever date you arrived. When you try to leave, time resets. But if you stay inside the truck stop, you can experience duration. Hours, days, years, it all stacks up inside the loop like water building behind a dam. So we just live here forever. Ruth spoke up. Most people do eventually leave. The loop isn't perfectly stable. There are fluctuations, moments when the boundary weakens. If you're trying to leave during a fluctuation, you slip through. You return to normal time flow. For you, it'll feel like you spent minutes or hours here. For the external world, it'll be exactly 7:43 p.m. How long until a fluctuation? Could be your next attempt, could be decades. I've been here the longest. Ruth gestured to herself, subjectively about 43 years. I was the cashier on duty when the loop formed. I've watched thousands of people pass through. Most leave within days, some stay years. A few, like Marcus and Jennifer and the others in this room, have been here for decades. Angela walked to the window. Outside, the truck stop looked normal. A few trucks in the lot, regular traffic on I-70. But she knew now that it was all illusion. Anyone who drove in and out normally was slipping past the loop. Only the unlucky ones got caught. What do we do here for years? Marcus smiled sadly. We live, we make the best of it. The truck stop has food, it replenishes every reset so we never run out. The showers work. The beds in the sleeper cab trucks outside belong to those of us who have been here longest. We've created a community. It's not freedom, but it's existence. Angela spent her first subjective week testing the boundary obsessively. She tried leaving on foot in her truck at different speeds from different exit points. Every time reset to 7:43 p.m. By the second week, she accepted she was trapped. By the third week, she'd moved her essentials into one of the abandoned trucks in the lot and established a routine. The community of the caught shared resources, knowledge, and time. Marcus taught philosophy classes in the restaurant booth. Jennifer led a book club, rereading the same books from the truck stop's magazine rack thousands of times, finding new meaning with each pass. A man named David, who'd been trapped for 7 years, ran a makeshift gym using truck parts as weights. Time became subjective. Angela stopped tracking days, stopped hoping for fluctuations. She fell into the rhythm of the loop, working shifts with Ruth to keep the truck stop functioning, sharing meals with the others, sleeping in her truck, existing in the 7:43 p.m. forever. She aged, her hair grayed. Her body accumulated years that the external world would never recognize. She'd arrived at 34. By her internal reckoning, she was now 41, though objectively she'd been at the truck stop for less than an hour. New people occasionally got caught in the loop. Angela would greet them, explain the situation, help them adjust, or encourage them to keep trying the boundary. Sometimes they'd slip through quickly. Others stayed, added to the community. The population of the trapped fluctuated between 12 and 23 people. Angela fell in love with Marcus in her 8th subjective year. They married in a ceremony performed by Ruth, who'd assumed the role of de facto mayor of the loop. They lived together in Marcus's truck, making a life in the frozen moment, aging together while the world outside remained locked at 7:43 p.m. By Angela's 17th year, she'd become an elder of the community. She'd watched new arrivals come and go, had seen some of the old-timers finally slip through during fluctuations and return to real. Ruth was still there, perpetual cashier, now into her 6th subjective decade. Marcus was there, now subjectively in his late 60s, his body showing the wear of years that weren't technically happening. And then, on a day Angela had stopped numbering, she felt it, the boundary weakening. She was walking past the fuel pumps when the air shimmered, when 7:43 p.m. cracked just slightly, when time's flow hiccuped. "Marcus," she shouted, "it's fluctuating." The community gathered. The boundary was unstable, rippling. This was a strong fluctuation multiple people might slip through. They formed a plan the longest trapped would try first. Ruth, who'd been there 43 years, Marcus, 26 years, Jennifer, 11 years. Ruth tried first, walked toward I-70. She crossed the property line, and this time she didn't reset. She kept walking, step by step, returning to reality. They watched her reach the highway, turn back and wave, and then she was gone, slipping into normal time, returning to whatever date she'd entered from. Marcus tried next. Angela held his hand as he approached the boundary. "I'll be right behind you," she said. Marcus crossed, kept walking. He was through, leaving the loop after 26 subjective years, aging back into the 1997 that was still waiting for him outside. Angela's turn. She approached the boundary, felt the fluctuation still holding, and hesitated. 17 years here, but outside? She'd been gone for less than an hour. Her family wouldn't know what she'd experienced. The wrinkles on her face, the gray in her hair, the lifetime she'd lived in the loop, none of it would match the timeline the external world expected. She'd return aged, changed, traumatized, and everyone would think she'd been gone for minutes. Could she go back to that reality, explain what happened, live in a world that didn't acknowledge her years? The fluctuation was weakening. Angela had seconds to decide. She stepped back, chose the loop, chose the community that understood, chose to stay in 7:43 p.m. forever rather than return to a world that would never validate her experience. The fluctuation closed, the boundary solidified. Angela was still trapped, but by choice now. Jennifer had escaped. Several others had slipped through. The community was smaller. Angela became the new elder, the one who'd been there longest by choice rather than chance. New arrivals came and went. The loop persisted. Angela aged, lived, existed in the eternal 7:43 p.m. and eventually stopped thinking of it as a trap. It was just home. Strange home, impossible home, but home nonetheless. Somewhere in the external world, Angela Reeves was declared missing in November 2023. Her truck was never found. Her family grieved, moved on, lived their lives. But at the crossroads truck stop, where time pooled and didn't flow, Angela lived on, aging through decades that never officially passed, existing in the crack between one moment and the next. Forever 7:43 p.m. Forever stuck. Forever, in a strange way, free. Asterisk Story 10. The Hitchhiker who was a road. The Hitchhiker's body was made of asphalt and painted yellow lines, and when David Okoye picked him up outside Amarillo, he didn't realize he'd invited a highway into his truck until it was too late to matter. It was 1:17 a.m. on February 28, 2024, and David had been hauling furniture from Dallas to Phoenix for Celadon Trucking when he saw the figure on the shoulder. Tall, wearing what looked like a reflective safety vest, thumb out in the universal hitchhiker gesture. The vest's reflective strips were too bright, too regular. They looked like lane dividers, that rhythmic dotted pattern highways use to separate traffic. David pulled over because he was lonely, because driving at night made him contemplative, because he'd recently gone through a divorce and sometimes talking to strangers was easier than talking to himself. "Need a lift?" David called through the passenger window. The figure approached, and in the headlights, David saw details that should have sent him driving away. The man's skin had a texture like asphalt, granular, black, slightly reflective. His eyes were yellow, the exact yellow of highway lane paint. His smile revealed teeth that looked like small white mile markers. But David's brain smoothed over the impossible details, convinced him he was seeing a normal hitchhiker in bad lighting. The man climbed in. Thank you, the hitchhiker said. His voice sounded like tires on pavement, a rolling, grinding hum shaped into language. I'm going west, as far as you're willing to take me. I can get you to Phoenix. Phoenix will do. The hitchhiker settled into the seat, and David heard creaking, not fabric, but something harder, structural. My name is Interstate. That's an unusual name. I'm an unusual person. Interstate turned to look at David fully, and his yellow eyes reflected the dashboard lights in ways that created the illusion of headlights approaching from a distance. I used to be State Route 66. Before that, I was the Beale Wagon Road. Before that, Native American trading paths. I've been a route across this continent for thousands of years, David. I'm a road that learned to walk. David laughed nervously, pulling back onto I-40. That's a hell of a story. It's not a story. I'm literally a road, or I was. I became conscious sometime in the 1950s when enough vehicles traveled me, enough consciousness drove across my surface. All that human awareness, all those journeys accumulated. I woke up, realized I was a thing that existed, and then I learned to manifest in this shape so I could travel myself instead of being traveled. David glanced over. Interstate's arm, resting on the door, looked like it was made of compacted road material. His fingers were painted lines. His fingernails were small, embedded reflectors. "You're fucking with me," David said, but his voice wavered. "I'm not. Watch." Interstate held up his hand and pressed it against the passenger window. His palm flattened, spread, became translucent, and through it David could see, not the Texas landscape outside, but a road. A highway stretching to infinity, seen from a driver's perspective, complete with lane lines and mile markers counting up into astronomical numbers. "That's my original body," Interstate explained. "Thousands of miles of asphalt and concrete still out there, still functioning, but also here in this manifestation, riding in your truck. I exist in multiple states simultaneously. I'm the road and the traveler, the path and the person walking it." David's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Why are you in my truck?" "Because I'm dying, David. Roads don't last forever. I'm being torn up, repaved, rerouted. Each time they change my surface, I lose memories. Each time they build a bypass, I lose part of my consciousness. I'm being erased by maintenance and progress. So I started manifesting these avatars, these walking versions, trying to experience what it's like to travel myself before I'm completely replaced." The highway ahead looked wrong suddenly. The lane markers were glowing, pulsing with light that didn't come from any external source. The white lines breathed, expanding and contracting like veins. "You're doing that," David said. "You're changing the road." "I'm connecting to it. This is I-40, part of my extended network. All highways are related. We're one vast organism spread across the continent. And when one of us becomes conscious, we can influence the others." Interstate gestured, and the road ahead split, not literally but perceptually. David could see multiple routes simultaneously, layered over each other like a glitch in reality. "I could take you anywhere," Interstate said. "Not just Phoenix. I could make your truck drive through roads that don't exist yet or roads that existed centuries ago. I could show you the original Route 66 in its prime, full of travelers and possibility. Or I could show you the future highways, roads made of light and data, vehicles that fly instead of roll. I contain all of it. Past, present, future. Every journey that ever happened on my surface. I want to go to Phoenix, just Phoenix. Normal route, normal roads." "Normal is subjective." Interstate touched the dashboard and the truck lurched, not physically but dimensionally. David felt it in his teeth, his bones. They were still on I-40, but also not. The highway had taken on qualities of other roads, other eras. He passed a billboard advertising a motor court that closed in 1967, past a gas station that wouldn't be built for another decade. The road was becoming unstuck in time, showing Interstate's memories instead of present reality. "Stop this," David demanded. "I'm not doing it intentionally. You're inside me now, inside my consciousness. When you picked me up, you invited me into your vehicle, but also invited your vehicle into me. We're merged. Your truck is traveling through my memories, through all the versions of highway that I've been." The landscape outside shifted. Desert became prairie, became forest, became desert again, cycling through ecosystems too fast, showing all the eras Interstate had witnessed. Other vehicles appeared, Model TS, muscle cars, futuristic vehicles that were just concepts. All of them driving the same road at the same time, separated by decades but visible simultaneously. "I'm going to crash," David said. The road ahead had too many layers, too many possible routes. He couldn't tell which one was real, which one his tires would actually contact. "You can't crash on me. I won't allow it." And Interstate was right. Despite the visual chaos, despite the layered realities, David's truck stayed on course, tires gripping asphalt that existed across multiple timelines. "What happens when we reach Phoenix?" "Phoenix is where I end, WH. Ere my consciousness disperses. The highways around Phoenix are newer. They don't remember me. I'll dissolve when we arrive, and you'll return to normal reality. This manifestation will end. I'll go back to being distributed across thousands of miles of road, unconscious again, just asphalt and paint." "So this is suicide? You're riding to your own death." Interstate laughed, and the sound was like 18-wheelers hitting expansion joints in perfect rhythm. "Roads don't die. We just change, become new routes, new surfaces. I'm not ending, I'm transforming. But this conscious episode, this brief period where I could walk and talk and ride in trucks, that's ending. I wanted to experience it, wanted to feel what it was like to be a traveler instead of the thing being traveled." David thought about his divorce, about driving alone through nights, about being a vehicle for moving things without having any destination of his own. He understood, in a strange way, what Interstate meant. "Can I ask you something?" David said. "Of course. All the people who have driven on you over the years, do you remember them?" "Every single one. Every truck, every car, every motorcycle. I remember their weights, their speeds, the vibrations they created. I remember accidents and celebrations, funeral processions and wedding caravans. I'm a witness to millions of lives, David. I know more about American history than any historian because I felt it happening mile by mile, journey by journey. Do you remember me? From before, if I've driven this route?" Interstate closed his yellow eyes, which somehow made the lane markers outside glow brighter. "Yes, you drove this route 17 times in the past 6 years, usually hauling furniture like now. I remember your truck's specific weight distribution. I remember that you always drive exactly 4 miles per hour over the speed limit. I remember the night 8 months ago when you cried while driving because your wife called to say she wanted a divorce, and you pulled over at mile marker 87 and sat there for 47 minutes trying to compose yourself." David felt tears forming. "You remember that?" "I remember everything that happens on my surface. Every joy, every sorrow, every mundane moment. That's what it means to be a road, to bear witness to all the lives that cross you." They drove through the night, through Interstate's memories, through versions of the highway that had existed and would exist. The sun rose over landscapes from a dozen different eras. They passed through Albuquerque that looked like 1950s postcards and Albuquerque that looked like 2080 concept art. And gradually, as they approached Arizona, Interstate began to fade. His asphalt skin became more translucent. His yellow eyes dimmed. The road outside returned to normal, singular, present-day I-40. "It's happening," Interstate said quietly. "I'm losing cohesion, dispersing back into my original form." "Will it hurt?" "I don't know. I've never died before. Or maybe I die every night and wake up every morning when the first vehicle drives on me. Maybe consciousness is just a daily event for roads, and I won't remember this conversation tomorrow." "I'll remember it." Interstate smiled, his mile marker teeth fading. "Good. Then I'll exist in your memory. A road that became a person who became a memory. That's a kind of immortality, isn't it?" Phoenix appeared on the horizon. Interstate was barely solid now, more suggestion than substance. His body flickered like heat haze there and not there. "Thank you for the ride, David," Interstate said. "You helped me understand what it's like to be a passenger, to let someone else determine the route. It was peaceful." And then he was gone. The passenger seat was empty. Had been empty, David's brain tried to tell him, had been empty the entire time. The hitchhiker was hallucination, fatigue-induced fantasy. But on the seat where Interstate had sat, David found a single object. A piece of asphalt about the size of a coin with a yellow line painted across it. Proof that something impossible had ridden with him. David delivered his furniture to Phoenix, completed his route. But on his drive back, he stopped at mile marker 87 on I-40, the place where he'd cried 8 months ago, where Interstate had remembered him. He got out of his truck, stood on the shoulder, and pressed his hand to the road's surface. For just a moment he felt it, a presence, a vast, distributed consciousness that stretched across thousands of miles. A road that remembered him, that knew his story, that had witnessed his pain and was somehow grateful that he'd existed, had driven, had been a small part of its infinite experience. David Akoy completed his career as a trucker, drove hundreds of thousands more miles. He never saw Interstate again in physical form, but he always felt watched while driving, not threateningly but protectively. Like the roads themselves were looking out or him. When David died 37 years later, his ashes were spread along I-40 at mile marker 87. And on that day, drivers reported something strange. For about 20 minutes, the highway seemed to glow. The lane lines pulsed with light. The asphalt felt warmer than it should. The road was saying goodbye to someone it remembered. Because roads have memories. And sometimes consciousness. And sometimes they learn to walk among us, hitchhiking toward their own transformation, seeking to understand what it means to be both the path and the traveler. Interstate returned to being distributed, but somewhere in the asphalt, in the painted lines, in the mile markers counting up into infinity, a consciousness persists. Watching, remembering, waiting for the next driver who'll listen closely enough to hear the highway speak.